just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite tutor, Ian Dawson Mackay. Next Level Guy is a go-to men's interview, interest and improvement website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, methods and protocols that you can implement in your own life to take it to the next level and live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is Geraint Jones, who's a UK Army veteran, a New York Times and Sunday Times best-selling writer. Geraint has been deployed on 3 tours of duty to Iraq and Afghanistan. For his actions in Iraq, Geraint earned the General Officer Commanding's Award for Gallantry. Following Afghanistan, he was selected for the Reconnaissance Platoon, the elite unit within the battalion. Upon leaving the military, Geraint worked to protect commercial shipping against Somali and Nigerian based piracy. He's now a full-time successful author, writing about his experiences in the military and other areas and some fictional accounts, such as the Roman Empire, etc. In this interview, we cover a lot of topics, such as serving in the military, his trouble when transitioning to civilian life, the issues and demons he faced during that time, modern men and masculinity, the need for a purpose in a man's life, how you can work out your own demons and become happy in your own life after such a big transition. We also touch on writing and so much more. There really is something here for everybody. If you're struggling in your life after a big change, if you're dealing with PTSD, depression, if you're dealing with demons from a past issue and you're wanting to transition and become happy again, this is one for you. It's a bit long, so you may want to take it in a couple of sittings because he lists a lot of gems throughout this, and I had to stop writing out what he was saying because if not, I would have copied out the whole podcast. I know you're going to love this. Geraint Jones is a great guy and he's going places. Check out his books in the links below. Now, let's get to the interview. Record actually, because there's a lot of good stuff here. But that's the really irritating thing about it is like, because you're sitting and you can be powerlifting, like say going about 200 kilograms or whatever, and you're like, yeah, but so-and-so said that about me, and I did it. And you're thinking, I'm about to pull some very heavy shit off the floor. I should be focusing on that bar right below me. And all your brain's going is, yeah, but that girl never texts you back, and oh, you're just obviously not attractive, and and you're thinking, what the fuck? But if you do that during jiu-jitsu, you're putting your lights out.
Yeah.
It's like
that's exactly it. I think that's why it's such a good thing too. There's not many things. There's not many like activities like that where you are fully like you are like forced to clear your mind, because if you're not, you're gonna get brought down to it very quickly.
Well, we get like
an arm around your neck.
It's we call it like a human chess match. So it's like you start moving to your right because you're waiting for me to go a certain way, like to the left, because you can see my lapel and you're going to put it between my legs, and then you're going to like rotate me one way, and you're going to tie up that arm, and then you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and it's like you're having a war with the other person, but you're kind of keeping it calm, and you explode at certain points, then you're kind of repositioning, and then you're slowing down, and you can.
Yeah, that's a big difference to like the grappling that we did in the army, because in that grappling, it was just like death match. It was just full. It was just like about one of the reasons that they introduced it was to just get guys used to kind of that physical confrontation, one-on-one confrontation. But there was no chess match about that. It was just like just all out strength and just trying to just wrestle someone and pin them and stuff. But that was so it's. But I'm sure that's something that like a lot of, especially young guys, probably struggle with in jiu-jitsu, is containing that animal instinct to just want to just use power and use power rather than.
Well, for me, it was the other way. It was like I'd grown up being 6'3", being the sort of gentle giant, and it was really a struggle for me to kind of hurt people. It was that weird thing of like now. Climb from like side control, where you're kind of making a T shape with them, and then climb on, so your hips are sitting on their hips. wrap your arm around them and try put their arm under their throat and then start squeezing, or lock on the triangle choke, and you're doing it to really to choke the blood out of them, to cut off the airways and stuff like that. And it was that kind of moment of, you go from being a normal guy who, you have a personal space, you have you can't sit close to somebody on the bus and you might offend them, to suddenly grab their arm and bend it back, stick that leg at, rotate at the knee and try to rip it out the socket kind of thing, and that's what you're getting trained to do. And then at the end you shake hands and you give the guy a hug, and you feel alive, and it's like you got a connection with him. It's a really strange hobby to do, but it's honestly changed my life, and it's made me realize that you don't need to apologize for it, for that masculinity side of it. And too many guys just go through life when you got girls with bigger thighs and bigger arses than guys, something's not right. Some guys have no muscles.
Yeah, I just can't get my head around that. Because, I've come from, I played rugby. I played rugby from as old as I could remember. And then I was in the army. So I've never been in I've never really kind of had groups of friends who aren't like that. You know what I mean? So in rugby, I think rugby sounds very similar to jiu-jitsu in the fact that, you are, I used to be, I would be a bit of a dirty bastard. If I saw an arm sticking out of something, I might give it a little twist. Not to the point of trying to break it, but to the point of just trying to piss off the other person, try and get a penalty out of them, that kind of thing. But then at the end of the game, you shake hands and you're all friends. But then, again, the army is, especially the infantry is a very, you are in each other's faces. You are living on top of each other. So that physical, I find it hard to get my head in, because I know that is not the usual experience for a man now, a young man or man in his 30s, 20s, teens, whatever. That physicality is not a normal part of people's life. It's always seemed like it to me, because it's been normal part of my life and normal part of most of my friends, but it isn't for most people. And I find that really hard to get my head around, because it just seems like the most natural thing. My thing now is I feel like I have to, I noticed when I was hanging out with some of my mates from Afghanistan, last weekend, we had a bit of a reunion when the book came out, and we were physical from the off. That's just how we are with each other. We're physical in sometimes messing around, giving each other little punches or stuff like that. We're also physical in showing emotion, physical with an arm. We could be talking to someone and we've got an arm over the shoulder, and not even pissed. You're not drunk at this point, but just that's how we display emotion physically, in the kind of the positive and the negative.
Mm. Well, you have. I interviewed a guy called Ryan Stone, or Rian Stone, I think it's, just the other day, and one of his things was that too many guys don't want to appear homosexual, so they miss out on the good things in life, pedicures and all that kind of stuff, because it looks dodgy to their friends and they're worried about what people see. But it's also that human contact, that kind of big long hug, that anything that somebody might go, make a joke about, a lot of guys back away from. And I think that's so sad. We miss connections with friends.
Yeah, we were last weekend, like I said, we weren't even drunk at this point. It was just a happiness of seeing brothers that you hadn't seen for years, and it was direct eye contact and just saying I really miss you, mate. I love you, and having that direct eye contact. And there wasn't one person at that table that hadn't killed people. That is a table of people who have been through some hard fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I'm thinking we don't have a problem saying it. We don't have a problem saying it. And I think that's probably one of the best gifts I ever got out of the army, was having that ability. Because it's definitely something, I don't know, it's something I've heard people talking about it on podcasts, saying that they don't feel like they can say this stuff. I find this gone different. I find it's gone the other way. I find now that as I'm getting into now I'm in my mid-30s, now more than ever, my civilian friends, my military friends, are all capable and willing to say, I love you, mate, even if maybe they need to have had a few drinks first. But people say it now. People will put it on the end of the text message. People will put a couple of kisses on there. Sometimes, sometimes you go over the top for joke. But I think my own personal experience has been that in the last few years, it's actually become more acceptable to get into that, that way of things. There's nothing wrong with if you're staying at your mate's house, nothing wrong. Both of you share the bed because there's only one bed, and you watch a bit of Bake Off together. There's nothing wrong with that. So my experience has been the opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, I find it strange because I've kind of come from a family of, like people give each other hugs, and like your nephew gives you a kiss goodbye and stuff like that when he's like 6 and stuff like that. And he's now at the point of like his friends are taking the mick out of him for it and all that. But like we've always been kind of like a kind of close family. We all sit around the table, have dinner, and I've always been kind of close to my brother and stuff like that. And my dad's side of the family have always been a bit stand up, a bit kind of afraid to show emotion. Is probably a better way of putting it. But like I've got friends who they're not even close to coming near you. Like there's a kind of a line there. But then with jiu-jitsu, you see it break down with people. You can see them kind of opening up a side of them that they never thought possible. And it's really strange. Like you care about the other person, and you start showing them like, no, don't choke me that way. Choke me this way. It's like you want the best for them, and it's that kind of side of like you always give each other hugs and like high fives and all that kind of stuff because it's an experience that you probably don't get in other avenues of life, but it's probably something that the closest.
Well, I don't know if you know the right girls.
It's probably the closest to like a band of brothers that you probably get like in the army that a civilian would get. That kind of or like a rugby team or something where there is that bond with guys. And do you think that's why a lot of guys are kind of fuck ups basically? Is this where they're going wrong, that we don't have that kind of ritual or team bondness or whatever you want to call it?
I think it just makes so much sense, doesn't it, when you look at it and just look at the fact that we are apes and look at how apes act in the natural world and the idea that, look, everyone is different and some people are more masculine than others. And, I like when you had Aubrey Marcus on as a guest, I like the way that he differentiated between masculine and male, that you can be a masculine female, you can be a feminine male. And I like that. But I think that there's just something that really kind of hits us in the DNA when we go out with a group of us with a common purpose. And that common purpose could be, supporting the same football team, or it could be, it could be going to war together. And I think the more hardship you experience together, the closer the bonds go. I mean, I don't think any of it is rocket science, really. You know what I mean? Like, I think like when are you happiest, when are you most fulfilled, when do you feel the most connection? It's usually when you've just gone through something hard with each other. Like, and like I remember like waiting for kickoff, in rugby, you got that moment and you're kind of like, fucking hell, I hope they don't kick it off to me. And then they do. And then you take that first tackle and then that's it. And you're into it. And then for the next 80 minutes, it's you and your mates against another set of mates. And, at the end of it, you've been knocked around. There's something as well. Something I started doing in the gym recently, sometimes if I don't feel like I'm in the mood, is just to start giving myself like a bit of a pounding in the shoulders and the chest, just to kind of get myself going. And you know what? It might look a bit stupid, but I tell you what, if you just start beating your fists against your chest and your arms for 20, 30 seconds, fucking hell, it puts you in the zone for working out. Like if at that point you're not fired up, you might as well just leave. But there's something about getting hit that just releases something within us. I don't know the exact physiological effects, but the psychological effects are, once you get hit, it's like same as in jiu-jitsu. I imagine it's like the first time, you get that first time that evening that you get an arm around your throat. Well, once that's done, then you're probably way more in the zone, and you probably start to feel, you get in that fight and flight, but you're getting all the good parts out of it rather than the negative, because there's no escaping fight or flight emotions. So it's about getting the good stuff out of it.
Well, I mean, when you, as one of my friends calls it, it's go time. It's that moment of you immediately go in and you're maybe thinking about like, well, my boss, this, and I had a pile of work to do and all that kind of stuff. But it's that moment you get that first takedown to the ground and somebody knocks you to the floor and they're on top of you and they're wrestling for your arm to try and bend it behind your back, or they're getting the arm around your, they come around behind you and they've got the arm around your throat, and it's that moment you quickly switch on, and if you're lucky enough to block it, because you fucked up a long time ago to get to that kind of stage. It's that moment it comes, you switch into it, and that's what I love about it. It's like you forget all your problems, and it's it's like you're saying, it's like for that 80 minutes, for the 2 hours, whatever it is for the training, you really get into that moment. And you see so many guys in the gym just sleepwalking. It's like the phones are out, they're playing songs between things, they're texting people, they're taking photos of themselves, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
You just described me in the gym. No, I've been the first to say I do have days. I definitely have days where I sleepwalk in the gym, and I think, to be honest, most of the days where I'm doing it, I'm aware that I'm doing it, and I'll be like, "You're not really getting the most out of this session," and then I'll have a kind of thing of like, "Right, well, what are you doing instead?" And if it's like, right, you're applying to emails, or you're trying to set up a holiday, or you're talking to a mate that you haven't spoken to for a while, sometimes I might go like, you know what, maybe that is actually more important than the workout, and it's better that you're here than not be here at all. But then I do think that it's great to have some kind of exercise where you can't do that. So like if you're doing jiu-jitsu or hill sprints or something, you can't, that you're not going to get distracted. You are going to be focused. And I think I don't try not to beat myself up about stuff, these days. So instead of being like, shit, you know what, that wasn't the greatest session, I was on my phone a bit too much, I try and think like, well, you know what, you went to the gym and okay, it wasn't the best, but okay, but look on the positive side. You just one of your friends messaged you that you hadn't heard of for a couple of months, and you found out that he's just had a baby. So that's cool, and you got a workout in. Now tomorrow you're going to go do some hill sprints because you recognize the fact that today wasn't the best workout, so you're going to make up with some hill sprints tomorrow. And that's kind of how I try and think of it then. But I do think like it is important to have that, because the other thing as well is like the thing with the phone is. For instance, if the phone's out in the car, you still know the phone's out in the car, and you're still distracted by the thought of being on your phone. If you're like, the distraction's there anyway. I think that there's some days where it's like I'll have my phone with me, but I really want that workout so much that I'm like, I don't give a fuck about my phone. It can be in my pocket. I don't care. It's just sometimes there's those days. And I think this is what differentiates people who are athletic machines. I know a few of them, and it's that they can turn that on every day, that absolute focus onto their athletic endeavors. Whereas for me, honestly, it's probably more of a, I'd say it's like a 50-50. It's whether or not I'm going to be totally in the zone that day or not. Because sometimes I can do it, like leave my phone out, take some kind of cognitive enhancer or whatever before I go. And I'll have all those kind of go first thing in the morning before I've even looked at emails or texts or anything like that. And I'll still find that I'm like fucking scatterbrained and not like that's kind of how it seems to go for me.
Well, I mean, you can never be 100% perfect, and that's the other side. Is I push myself to the point of like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get like a podcast tonight, and then I'm going to get a post out ready for tomorrow. Then I'm going to schedule another one, and then I'll be going absolutely fine. And then I'm going to have a shit training session, and that'll be it. My brain will be off. But I mean, I listen to music and stuff like that in the gym, and then there's days I'll be sitting and I'll miss a squat that I could smash, reps and reps of, because I'm not focusing on playing with my phone and that. And then there's other days, like you say, you go in and you have to kind of switch yourself into it, and you have a great session. Other times you go in and you have an amazing session. So I mean, it's definitely you need a balance, a healthy.
So something I've started doing. Which is because I like, and I were talking before we hit record, like we're both hard people ourselves. I'm sure most of your guests probably are, and that's why you want it. That's why they're doing what they're doing. But one thing that I've started doing, which has really helped me, is that if I do have a session which I don't think is the best, I think, right, you know what, it's not the end of the world. This evening, you're going to do 10 minutes in the house. And you're going to do, or you're going to do fucking 2 Tabata circuits, 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, that kind of thing. And you're just going to do 8 minutes of fucking squats or 8 minutes of high knees or something like that. And that little kind of like, it's like an admission and a correction. That puts me in a really good mental place then, because it's like you've acknowledged that you've not done your best work, but then you've also kind of acknowledged to yourself as like, this isn't a punishment, but it's just like, hey, look, it's not a big deal. We can make up for it. And we'll just do some high intensity stuff for 5 minutes. And then having done that, you actually get the knock-on effect then of feeling really good about yourself, because it's like, yeah, you know what? I could have done better. And I did. And I made up for it. And now I can go to bed. I'm not going to be lying in bed going, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have done a better session this morning. It's like, you've made up for it. And I think doing that's really helped me out with like kind of picking up the slack on training.
I mean, do you still find that you have a lot of days where you kind of struggle like that, or are you kind of getting kind of more motivated now? Is it the same sort of thing with your writing?
I'm very good at beating myself up, but I've become a lot more. I'd say over the last year, I've become a lot more accepting of myself as a person, and therefore, it's I used to do this thing of comparing myself to other people a lot. So, like, let's say, for instance, I had a bad session where I could go, oh, well, I've still done more than other people. But then the flip side of that is then you look at, the people I compare myself to would be like, I have friends who are professional athletes. So I'm a fucking writer, but I'd be comparing my physique to the professional athletes that I know, or I'd be comparing my bench to the professional athletes I know, even though my job is to type out fucking words. So, that's how, so that didn't work for me doing that, because I would just put myself in a bad place. Now that I just kind of, I'm more accepting of who I am as a person, and more accepting that I'm a human, and there's going to be days where I train well, and there's going to be days that I don't, and same as writing. But it depends, dude. It's like if things are going well in life, it's a lot easier to be okay with how things are going. If a lot of things if things are going wrong or not as you'd want them to, then it's easier to start to beat yourself up.
It certainly sounds like we're very similar. It's that kind of moment of like you expect 100% perfect from yourself the whole time, and you get annoyed with a simple slide. There's Instagram. There's a thing called Afro Brutality, I think the thing's called, and I think one of it is like you're always being Afro Brutality, and it's saying you're busy doubting yourself while so many people are intimidated by your fucking potential, and that really hit home for me. It's like, it's how much we kind of critique all tiny little things where people are seeing the amazing things you're doing, but we can't see it. You can't see the wood for the trees because you're so focused on the little things. And I think we don't give, especially as men, we don't give ourselves credit for a lot of the good stuff. But we come from a society where you're not meant to talk about your problems. You're not meant to talk about your emotions. You're meant to be the breadwinner. You're meant to be strong. You're meant to be dominant. Great father, perfect at your job, cars, all this kind of stuff. A lot of guys can't cope with that. We've never been brought up. We haven't got the hard skills, the soft skills to cope with any of this kind of stuff. And you see yourself as a lot of guys get lost, and they need things like jiu-jitsu, the military, team sports, mentors to try and bring them out of it, because we seem to be a lost generation at the moment. It's really sad. You see these guys on the bus hurling abuse at like old people and stuff like that, and you think, what the fuck happened to you? I would have been beaten black and blue by my parents if I even dared give a dirty look at somebody back then.
Yeah, that's the thing with those people. I am very much in the thing of now of I look at somebody and I do still think you're responsible for your actions, but you don't become a kid who's throwing abuse at an old person on a bus or whatever if you had good parents. You just don't, So I'm not saying that I'm not painting the them as the victim, but the fact is that they've probably had a pretty shit life if that's what they've turned into. But at the same time, like I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was telling me about like a problem someone in her family's having, and I know it sounded bad. He's a 17-year-old lad now, and the answer that just kept popping in my head was, someone needs to just give this lad a fucking slap. Like, he's never had anything bad happen to his life. Everyone's bending over backwards for him, giving him excuses. And I thought, he needs a copper or someone to give him a fucking slap around the head. I'm not saying beat him up. I'm saying give him a slap around the head and say, you know what, mate? You're not fucking hard. There's not this big fucking bad man you think you are. You're a fucking weasel who contributes nothing. And you know what? You'll always fucking be that. And, you can talk about, like, he's one of these kids who thinks he's a fucking gangster and stuff, but he's not hard. He's not He's not scary. There are people out there who are fucking hard and scary fucking gangsters. There are real ones out there. And I think, Jesus Christ, because I thought, like, if you threw him in a fucking cell with some fucking some actually scary people for a day. Like, I've been into, thank God I've never been to prison on a sentence, but I've been into prisons on visits to talk to veterans in there, try and like help them out with, like get some of the kind of like the things that I've learned to help my mental health. And just being there for a day was enough to make me think, like, Jesus Christ, there's some fucking scary fuckers in there. And I mean, I've been through some shit, and I thought they were scary fuckers. And I thought, you should just be able to grab a lad like him, drag him down there, throw him in, and say, "You want to stay here for the day, or you're going to fucking get your act together?" And he's even fucking changed. It seems to like such an obvious answer, but we're a very weird society in that we're okay with extreme violence. Like, we're okay with war. We're okay with having computer games which show, people, you can kill people. We're okay with that. But we're not okay with slapping someone around with the head when they deserve a fucking slap. And I'm sorry if it offends anyone, but sometimes people deserve a fucking slap.
Mm-hmm. Like when we were growing up, I got like a slap in the bum for talking like swearing in front of a parent and all this kind of stuff, and it never did anything to me. And then nowadays, it's this moment of like, you can't, we get participation trophies, we can't tell kids off. And you see the kind of what's happening. I mean, I don't agree that we should be like corporal punishment, like the belts in schools and all that kind of stuff. But there needs to be some level of discipline. And this is the problem: is a lot of people don't have any kind of rituals from into manhood. They don't have to kind of be. They don't have to show anything. They've got no need for them because they get like. We're picking at the tab for them to, job seekers allowance and all this kind of stuff. And it's really irritating because they're not ever been given the opportunity. And probably deep down, a lot of them are probably nice people who've gone by the wayside and have created a kind of character or personality. Obviously there's some arseholes, but there are probably some people who could be saved, but just haven't had a chance, or they haven't had enough.
Well, there's no fear of consequence because they know that nobody, so I'm just going to stick with your example of like the kid on the bus. So, let's say there's a young kid on the bus hurling abuse at somebody on the bus. They know that nobody can do anything to them. And not only can nobody do anything to them, but if anybody does, then the tables are actually turned, and then that person is going to have the law go after them. Now, I don't think that you're going to find many people who would, honestly, if you poll people in the UK, and let's say this scenario of, let's say you've got a 16-year-old lad who's taunting and abusing an elderly person on the bus, and this person is like, you can see is upset physically and mentally, right? I don't think you're going to find many people who would have a problem with a man in his 30s fucking threatening that lad to shut his mouth, and if he doesn't, he gets a clack around the head. And I'm not saying a punch or whatever, there's a big difference between hitting someone and giving a clack around the head to basically, because the thing is, right, you do jiu-jitsu, so you get choked out on a regular basis. You're still alive. You're still here. No. It hasn't done you any harm. I've been fucking knocked around. I got knocked around in rugby for the best part of, 15, 16 years. It didn't do me any harm. Giving a lad an open palm around the fucking side of the head, it's not about physically hurting them. It's about putting them in their place and saying, you are not above reproach. You are not above things happening to you. Because what young lads especially fear more than anything else is being made to look an idiot and being made to be ashamed. So they are far more, because something like an ASBO or something is just a badge of honor. It doesn't worry them. Whereas if they got a clap round their head and their hat goes flying and they all of a sudden are literally kind of have to shut their mouth because they know that they're in fucking trouble at that point, that is way more of a deterrent than anything else. And I'm sorry if that doesn't fucking sit well with people's, what they want the world to be like. But what you want the world to be like and what the world is are two very fucking different things. People forget that we are an animal, we are an ape. So much of our desires and our actions are driven by our hardwiring, our fucking, what's in, it's not what choices we make, it's what's in us, right? So if we can accept that about some things, if we can accept that we're driven to want partners, and we're driven to, we're driven to seek, we're driven to seek food, we're driven to seek shelter, all that kind of stuff. Why can we not accept that there are, like, we look at it on a strategic point of view. Nobody has a problem with the UK, the US, Western countries slapping down terrorist groups in order to maintain, our hierarchy, our position in the world. No one has a problem with that. But then on a personal level, they have a problem with you doing exactly the same action, to keep that kind of hierarchy, and that hierarchy that kind of ensures as much as possible that there's peace. There is no perfect system, but that slap around that kid's head could stop him being an arsehole for the next 10 years of his life. And is it not better? Is it not better to have that? Is it
Definitely.
not better to have that? Because I tell you, if it was a possibility, it would very rarely need to happen.
Would you say it's probably more that when it's war zones and things like that, it's away, it's out of sight? It's kind of like somebody else is doing it, somebody else is having to step up and be that person to control it. Whereas if it's you having to tell somebody off on the bus for being cheeky, or a drunk guy, mouthing off in front of the kids or whatever it is, is that why a lot of people would prefer it?
Yeah, there's that diffusion of personal responsibility for one thing. It's like, people want things done. They don't often want to do it themselves, and that's one thing. The other thing as well is that it's scary on two levels to stand up to things like that. One of the reasons it's scary is because there is the consequence that there could be physical harm. Now, again, this might be an unpopular opinion with some people, probably not with your listeners, but I think if you are a man, and if you are a physically capable man, you have a duty to stand up for people who cannot physically stand up for themselves as well as you can. I'll give an example. Once I was on the train, and there was a group of people who were being, like, there was a family of them. They were being very abusive to other people on the train. A couple of people had tried to speak to them nicely. That just got them abuse. You could feel the atmosphere in that carriage. Everybody was put off, scared by these people. And I thought, I was on my own, and I thought, you know what? I'm a fucking soldier. I have fucking responsibilities to stick up for people. And so I went and talked to these people. I tried to do it as pleasantly as possible. And then, straight away their threats came out. My cousins will be waiting to stab you when you get off the train, all of that. And then straight away that switch flicked in me then. I thought, well, fucking bring your fucking cousins then. And it was that point when I actually wanted that physical confrontation, which probably wasn't the smartest thing, but I'm just being honest. And I thought, like, at least at that point, their attention and stuff was directed at me rather than the elderly women and stuff that it had been directed at on the train. And you know what? Maybe I might have ended up getting my fucking head kicked in on that train. But I'm a member of society. Sometimes maybe it's your job to take a kick in so that other people don't. So that other people don't take it. And I just think that, for lack of a better word, a lot of people are fucking wimps, and they won't stand up for things. Now, in people's defense, let's be honest, the law is not kind to people who do stick up for other people in these situations. Like, if you come into a situation like that, you are far more likely to probably find yourself on the end of the police report rather than the person who's helping to give it. And I think that is such a terrible thing, where we're in this position where you have to honestly think twice of, I know it's the right thing to get involved, because we know right from wrong. So you're like, I know it's the right thing to get involved, but what happens if I do? I mean, so for me, I want to eventually one day move to the States. Me intervening in a fight, like let's say I was seeing some young kids and they were being abusive towards somebody, and I went over, tried to break it up, and I end up having to put my hands on these, and I say kids, let's say they're 16. I end up having to put my hands on them, right? I could end up with some kind of sanctions from that, which would stop me being able to get a visa to go and live in the States. So if I see a situation like that, I have to ask myself, do I want to get involved in this situation? And I think it's fucking nuts that we're in that position.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it could, even though you're doing the right thing, could stop you evolving and developing as a person because of some situation. And somebody, they treat that like they're the guilty, like they're the hurt party, that they're the injured party, and you're the one that was in the wrong, and you think something's not right here. It's
Yeah, and it's not just them doing it; it's they're backed up by a lot of the time. They are backed up by the lawmakers, and they are backed up. I told this story on my podcast recently. My mum had been doing some property development, and the local kids kept coming and stoning the windows through. And the police attitude was, "Oh well, the kids don't have anything else to do." And I'm like, wait, what? How has it got to this position where the police are standing up for kids smashing windows, saying they haven't got anything else to fucking do? But that is the attitude in a lot of the police, in a lot of policing. Not all policing, there's some fucking awesome cops out there, and I'm sure that they are the most frustrated out of anybody with this stuff. But there are a lot of people who blame the victims, and that's something that we see across anything from violence to rape. It's a lot of time there's victim blaming, and it's and then people standing up for the culprits. Oh well, they had a bad upbringing. All right, fine, I'll take that. They had a bad upbringing. But what you need to do there, if they had a bad upbringing, you fucking punish them and help rehabilitate them. You don't wipe the slate clean because someone had a bad. Everyone has had some shit happen in their life. I don't care if you're fucking upper class, middle class, lower class, whatever. Everyone's had some fucking shit. You might be from a fucking upper class family, and you might have had a violent father. There's not a class. There's not one class that has the kind of monopoly on trauma in their lives. And I think it's sad because it's for the detriment of everybody. It's for the detriment of everybody in society as a whole that we let this shit slide.
So how would we, like, it winds me up when I think back, like, that you'd have been marched down, you'd have been told to apologize to the person, you probably would have got, like, bollocking by both your parents, you'd have been grounded and all that. And nowadays it's just kind of, you ask these parents, don't even know where their kids are. They're just out drinking. It's just like, no, we just let them do what they want. Or we're the cool parent. We're the friend and all that. And you think, you what? I was like, I knew exactly where I stood with my parents. Like, I would never talk back to them because I knew my mom would just need to raise her eyebrow and that'd be it. I'd be like, fair enough. But I just don't get the world we're in. But how did you find the army took these kind of kids who came in, who are little arseholes, who maybe had no kind of control? Not saying that every soldier is, but the ones who come and they need the discipline. How does the army take somebody like that and shape them into like amazing people? Because these guys who like served in the wars, like in the World War II and all that, these guys who have maybe come from broken homes and have become amazing people by their time in the forces. How does the army shape you as a kind of into a good person?
Right. Well, there's a few things on this. First of all, I'd say that the army that exists now, I have been told, is different to the one that I belong to. I do think that from what I've heard, this culture has seeped into the army now, which is, inevitable. The army is always going to be a reflection of society to a lot of extent. So I'm speaking for the army that I joined in 2000, and the way I had to solve a lot of issues was with my fist. Like sometimes the lads didn't want to do what you told them, and what we used to call was go behind the HESCO, where HESCO is like the big baskets that are filled with sand and stuff to it's like blast protection, and you go behind there and you sort out your fists. I don't think there's that much of that around anymore. There's probably less of it around when I was in than there was before, and and so on and so forth. But that was part of it. Sometimes you need to fucking hit someone, as simple as that. You just had to hit somebody. And sometimes you need to beat that into them. Now, obviously, there's a lot of that wasn't all the time, and I think that what I would say is not everyone that goes into the army does come out better for it. Some people are a shitbag when they go in, and they're a shitbag when they come out. And as much as I'd love to say that everybody in the army is this gleaming, upstanding person, they're not. There are a lot of shitbags, but mostly it's good blokes. And I think that the thing that makes people their best, or they might think that they feel like they were at their best in the military, is that you've got a very clearly defined purpose. Even if you're not on operations, just being a soldier is a purpose in itself. It's obviously a very strong identity, and it's a group identity. So you have team. You I think one of the biggest issues that society is kind of facing now is we've gone into this idea that it's good for people to live on their own, which I think is bonkers. I think that the idea of us living, like we strive from you finish school and it's like you try and go out and live on your own as soon as possible, live in an apartment on your own. I think that's fucking nuts. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you look back through history, people have not lived on their own, really. That's not been a thing. But then again, I come back to this hard wiring. Why do we think that, we are in this grip of an epidemic of suicides and loneliness? Well, does it not make sense that that's because people have been fed this lie that you should be trying to move out and live on your own as soon as possible, live in this fucking little apartment on your own? It's fucking nuts.
And then we end up.
So I think
we end up with no kind of social grouping because you become lonely.
You're just not meant to be on your own. We're not meant to be on our own. That's just so stupid. So in the army, just being in a group, having your group, and then it's all the things that come through that. It's the banter, I think I heard this Harvard Business study. I think I heard this on Joe Rogan or something. I think it was there's a Harvard Business School study that came out saying that something like this ridiculous number of people, or ridiculous percentage of people in the workplace, were too scared to talk to their colleagues in case they said something that offended them. Well, I tell you what, you're not having that fucking issue in the army. We used to take the piss out of the only thing that you wouldn't take the piss out of was someone's kids. But we had people with dead mums, but we'd be making jokes about the kind of necrophilia that they get up to with their dead mums. There was no limit to the banter. So you didn't have to watch what you said. The banter was merciless. Sometimes it would go too far, of course, but that was there. You didn't have to watch what you say. And so, to just have that liberty of being able to say whatever's on your mind and run your mouth, I think that's really underestimated how important that is. And then, then there's the physical attribute, every morning, you start every morning with PT. So even if those of us who were keen, we do our own stuff late in the day as well. But at a very minimum, you're doing PT once a day. So I'm sure it's well documented on your podcast, the positive effect. I doubt you've had many guests on, if any, who have said that exercise is not an important part of life, right?
Anybody.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got exercise in your day. There's not, you're not going to have to worry about when can I fit the gym in. Don't worry, your day is starting with physical exercise, and it might be something really fucking hard, like a log run or an obstacle course or something like that. So there's a lot of these attributes that come with it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are negative sides and there's negative consequences of military service as well. But I just think, for me, I look at it and I think that was when I was at my most natural state. When we were in Afghanistan, when there was a group of us living in a small little patrol base together, and I mean 15, 16 of us living together, we don't have no electricity, no distractions, just a group of young, it's like the hunter-gatherer thing. The men would go off together and hunt. Maybe you go for days at a time. There'd be the group of you, you'd work together, you'd be in a fight for survival maybe at times. And I mean, so to be at war with a small group of guys, that is as close as our natural state as you can get to in 2019.
I mean, would you say, because I was actually just hitting home that, I mean, would you say that all guys should be doing combat sports and rugby and team sports and that, in a way that I would teach them self-defense, but it would also allow them to learn to control their energy? Is that why some of these kids act out, is because they don't have a kind of control on their energy? They don't have an outlet to get rid of it, so it kind of comes out in abrupt other ways, like what we see as them being a wee arsehole might be their way of kind of try to deal with like the energy that's flowing through them and they don't know how to deal with it? Or is it apologizing?
I don't think that there's any coincidence that this kind of like that behavior and stuff that you're talking about has coincided with taking things like there's very few schools now that have rugby, because they've taken these physical sports away. Like young men. I'm not all young men, but masculine young men want contact. They need to get aggression out. I mean, when you are like a young man, you have so much testosterone bouncing around yourself. It's going to come out it's going to express itself in one way or another. So, I think there's an arrogance in our society in thinking that we know better now than all these generations that have come before us. There's a reason that institutions and sports like rugby and boxing and things, there's a reason that these things are developed. And it's not, it was like boxing didn't develop so a few people could get rich off pay-per-view. It served a purpose in the community. And it taught people discipline. It taught people the fact that they should respect, they should respect anger, or sorry, they should control, they should control anger, and they could develop a skill, and they could, they could challenge them. Because anyone that says boxing is not about challenging other people; it's about challenging yourself. Same as jiu-jitsu or anything like that. It's about this challenge against yourself. And if somebody doesn't have that, I can't imagine how I would have turned out if I didn't have the outlets of rugby in the military. I'd probably be a horrible, bitter, twisted, and angry person. I'm fucking angry now, and I've had outlets for it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. It's like when I look at back when I was younger, we used to play a game called British Bulldogs. I don't know if you ever played this at school.
Yeah. Great game. You're not allowed to play it now.
Yeah, because people were like almost killing each other. But at the end of it, you come in and you'd be like so close to your pals, and you see that now with so many kids when they're younger. Is they want to be out and playing. They want to be Captain Jack Sparrow. They want to be this guy, the teenage turtle, all these kind of things. But but they're playing. They're chasing each other. They're jumping on top of each other. They're rolling around on the floor, wrestling and all that. And nowadays, parents are giving them like a wee movie cinema for the car, because rather than speak to them and expand their mind, or they're giving them the iPad before dinner because they can't be bothered really they don't know what to do with them. And they've taken away that physicalness. Like I've got 2 young nephews and a niece, and they're very restricted on, like their iPad use, their phone use and all that. But like they love it when they get a chance, but they much rather playing and creating and going out and frog spawn and chasing, like working. Well, we got sheep, like the family, like sort of croft and all that. They love all that kind of helping stuff. But they love being part of nature kind of thing. And I think that's missing with so many kids. Is some kids never get to experience like going into a field and seeing where their food comes from, or helping somebody and doing a proper honest day's graft to work. Do you remember the TV show, the one that put people to was it the First World War military service? I'm trying to think what it's called. Hard Bastards or something?
Oh, you're about Bad
That's the one.
Is that Bad Lads Army? Yeah, there was like a national service. It was like 50s national service. It was. I mean, that was a great example of a bunch of lads who thought they were hard, who weren't hard, because they all ended up crying on there. And I mean, I'll tell you this: I've never seen lads crying in normal army training. So it's the fact that these lads were crying because they thought, but it's because they thought they were so hard, and then they had their worldview shattered, because their worldview was I'm nails and the world revolves around me. And then what was so great about that show was that it was like, the world doesn't revolve around you. You're not nails, but you know what? You are valuable, and you can be a great bloke, and you can become a hard bastard, and you can become. So it wasn't about just saying like, no, you're a shitbag and you don't deserve any help. It was actually the opposite. And this is what I'm a pretty liberal person in a lot of ways, but I think where a lot of people go wrong when they're trying to, because I do believe people try and do these things for the right reasons. But when you're soft on people, that is actually that you're actually doing them a disservice, because you're never going to get the best out of that person. So what I loved about that series was you'd have these lads who were shitbags, but it wasn't about breaking them down for no reason. It wasn't about breaking them down to be like, look what we can do to you, we can break you down. It was about, we are going to build you into your best self. And by the end of that show, every single one of those lads was happy that they'd gone, and they were a better version of themselves. And I don't think national service these days can work. I think once it was got rid of, there's no bringing it back. And I also don't. I'm also like, I'm not a fan of having I'm not a fan of having an army full of conscripts. I just don't think operationally it's a good idea. And I don't think people, if they don't want to be part of a military service, then they shouldn't have to. But I do think some form of service which puts people out of their comfort zone, which takes them away from their hometowns, which makes them mix with different groups of people. All these things I think are so important. I think it's a real shame that there's nothing like, there's nothing like that around. What I was going to say, though, going back onto something about the physical stuff with kids, because I do know I'm not a parent myself, but I do know some great parents, and to be fair, they are fantastic with their kids about getting them out, doing all that stuff that you were talking about. I thought it was really interesting. One day I was at the zoo, and outside the monkey enclosure, they had a set of monkey bars. So kids could go up on these monkey bars and act out like, the monkeys. And these little kids were flying across the monkey bars. And I thought, I'm a fit bloke now, and I can't, because I've got all tight in my upper back and stuff. I thought, I'll still do monkey bars, but I'm not flying across them. And I thought most people would not, most grown men in their 20s and 30s would not be able to do monkey bars. No chance at all. And I thought, fuck me. I thought, when did it become, when was it that there's that break where you go, right, now it's not okay to play on monkey bars and stuff anymore? And I think it's probably when kids get to their teens. I think that's when that kind of stuff stops happening. And once you stop doing it for a few years, it's very hard for someone to ever get back into it. And I thought, if there's one thing I could change about like our education system, it would be that like physical activity would be a huge part of the syllabus, and not just sports, but just things like getting people playing. Like, again, I'm going to go back to Aubrey Marcus, because he's like, I know he's a guest you've had before, and I've just finished listening to his book, that On the Day book, and I thought this is something that I definitely believe in, and a lot of my friends do too, is getting back to play. So if it's throwing a football around, or like an American football around on the beach, or a frisbee, or it's a bit of touch rugby or something like that, the more you do that stuff in adulthood, the better, I think. And definitely that is what needs to be happening in childhood, is playing and moving. Because if you're not doing it in your teens, you're never going to be doing it the rest of your life.
And how many guys have grown up, the last thing they did exercise-wise was probably PE when they were at school, like physical education. There's a guy called Charlie Hohen. I don't know if you ever read his book, Play It Away. And that's what he says, is that we've forgotten how to play. We've forgotten the joy of just going out there and just playing for the sake of playing. You don't need to compete. You don't need to do it for fitness. But he said, he shows the benefits of like that you build your skills, your creative thinking, that you get fit, you do this, you get used to playing with people, the closeness again, and human touch and social interaction, all these kind of skills. But he's like, we've just forgotten how to play. And it's like, how many guys do you hear that? It's like, oh, I used to lift, but now my knee's baggered. Oh, I used to lift, but now my back's sore. And you think, what do you mean used to? Why did you stop? And it's like, as soon as you use it, you lose it. And it's really sad that, this is why I always find it strange. It's like, because you see countries like Israel, like they have conscripts. Is it Norway that does the same? They have like their national service, and you think, is that a thing that we should be doing? Should we be, you see that debate the whole time is, should people be forced to do something in the, like for their country to instill that national pride.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't work now. It just wouldn't. Like when you've got a society. So like when I was in Norway recently, they were people there were very polite. It was respectful. There was a sense of civic pride there. You could just feel. And like their thing with their conscription in Norway as well is it's voluntary. So it's like you get called up, but if you don't really want to go, you don't have to go. So I mean that kind of defeats the object like a little bit. But for the people that are maybe on the fence, it's a good way of getting them in because they're thinking, well, I could just go and do a couple of years and great. But I think in our nation now, there's in the UK for in international listeners, there's no way that it could happen because even in the army now, you can't do you for instance in the army now sometimes you can't speak to someone in a certain way if they find it offensive. Well, you're in the fucking army. Bottom line is your job is to kill people. Even if you're a chef, right? Well, I mean, especially a chef in the army, they probably kill more people than anyone else. But like, your job is to, if called upon, you have to kill people. So the idea that you can turn around to your corporal and say, "Corporal, I don't like you speaking to me in that way," is mental. I mean, that is absolutely, that is the definition of insanity. That is mad. So if you can't do that in the regular army, then, I mean, there's just absolutely no point in us having national service here anyway, because it would be so watered down that it would never, the opposite would be true. The opposite would be you'd get the opposite of effect of what you were going for.
Yeah, because that would be my worry, would be that we'd have to do it using today's rules. You wouldn't have it like...
Well, yeah, it just won't work.
Because even back that Bad Lads Army, you could see that there was like, the things they were allowed to do if they did escape or leave and stuff like that. They did have the option to go, so you knew deep down that wasn't you. But I mean, back in the day, they would have got put in jail if they deserted, and it's...
Yeah, exactly. So in 2000, right, when I was a recruit, I was on a night exercise during my recruit training, and I didn't change fire positions fast enough, so I got kicked in my helmet by the instructor, right? So all it was a kick in the side of my helmet, and it hurt. It hurt a little bit, but not much. It was definitely nothing as bad as getting tackled in rugby. This wasn't as bad as getting big hit in rugby. Do you think I ever forgot that lesson about not changing fire positions?
I think you changed quicker.
Yes, and you know what? When I went to Afghanistan and Iraq, that was a pretty fucking important skill to have. So what was better? What was more humane to me? What was better to me? Giving me a little kick in the helmet one night, or being like, "Oh, you know what, sweetheart? Maybe you could change fire positions better." And I go to Afghanistan and I don't change fire positions, I get shot and killed. Like,
I'd be more worried if they call me sweetheart.
Yeah, but it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Like, I was training for war. And I got reinforced. Don't get me wrong. If he kicked me every minute of every day, that lesson wouldn't have stuck out. But because it was the one time it happened to me from him, it stuck out. And I think that is a difference. We're a very black and white society. Why does it have to be? Why does it have to be? You can't touch recruits, or you can't. Or you can. Well, life isn't black and white. There's nuance to everything, and in that occasion, if you gave me the option of like, if you can go back then and you can get the same lesson, except this time he's going to kick you harder and give you a concussion, I'd say I'll still take that lesson because it's better than getting fucking shot.
And that's the thing, though. It's like, how many times have you had a parent do something that's maybe like you've thought, oh, fucking hell, but later on you've realised they did it for the right reasons, and at the end of the day, he has to try to keep you alive in a situation that there is people there trying to hurt you. Yes, in today's society, if you did it as a teacher, it might be seen as unprofessional or whatever, but if you didn't do that and somebody got killed, that's on their conscience, and that's the bit that, and he's doing something that sticks with you, which will then help you become a better soldier, a better person, but also help you train other people and help them become better soldiers. And, it's like that sort of pass it on thing. And that's what bugs me, is like, people kind of going, oh, you hurt my feelings. Well, if I hurt your feelings and save your life, I'll hurt your feelings all the time. And that's what I found even now. Like,
Well, sorry, but I just want to jump in there on the hurt feelings one, because I think this is something. What I want to know is, when did it become a thing that there was this law that you're not allowed to hurt people's feelings?
there is
Right.
one, is there?
So, for instance, when I put a book out, someone can review my book and say that it sucks. Right. Now, to follow through on how people are saying that we shouldn't be hurting people's feelings. Well, are we going to go to the thing that no one can post a negative review on Amazon or something? Like, the fact is that someone's feelings are going to get this line has been drawn in of you can't hurt feelings and stuff. Well, the world doesn't operate by those rules. So we have this weird two-tiered system where we think personally we can't do that, but then professionally we can. And you can't have those two things separate. It doesn't work. You can't operate in business with the same rules that you have people have in their personal life now. So I just think, taking it back to children and young men, again, you're doing people a disservice, because when you take, let's say somebody's been told all their life, oh, you can do everything, you're great, everything's going to work out for you. No, you're not a shitbag. No, don't worry about smashing that person's window. That wasn't your fault. You had nothing to do. And you go to the bank and you're like, oh, I want to do this business. And the bank look at your plan and go, no. Like, oh, how's that person going to handle that? Or they go, and they get their first job, and then the person says to them, you know what, like, you're not up to scratch, we're letting you go. Like, is it any wonder that young people are then suffering with mental health issues? Because their whole worldview is getting shattered. And that's not their fault. That's the fault of the people that have been doing it to them. It's like, and there's an old saying of, like, you've got to be cruel to be kind. I don't even think you've got to be cruel to be kind. You've just got to be honest to be kind.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how often do you see this nowadays of, like, they stop giving out first, second, and third, trophies in sports days because they don't want the other people taking part to feel let down? I thought, I'd rather you teach somebody that if you don't put the effort in, you don't get anything from life. That, like, if you're not, I can't remember who said it. There was a quote that said, if you're not got haters with what you're producing, you're obviously not producing some, it's not like you're an honest interpretation of what you really could do because you try to please everybody. So if you haven't got haters, you're not doing it right. And every time I get a negative review, which I've had plenty of, like, I think I got told off by somebody in one of my videos because I had a Scottish accent. And I thought, I'm bloody from Scotland. What were you expecting? But, it's like, but when you read...
Probably someone English.
But you know what I mean? It's like...
Don't tread the Celts as usual.
But I'll read through them and I'll think, do they have merit? Is what they're saying true? Is my sound quality poor? Is it this? Is it that? Or are they just being a dick with their opinion? And I go, yeah, that's not really good enough. Or I'll maybe change if it's something that's meritable, like, that is something that's there. Meritable, I don't even know if that's a word. But you know what I mean? It's like you take something from it, and it's like, you'll read your reviews and go, okay, have they got something honest there? No? Right, fine. But, you know enough to accept and go, yeah, it's their opinion. They might be wrong. They might disagree with me. Like,
the thing about reviews, mate, is that you look at who's giving the reviews, they're usually like 5-star or 1-star. And the truth is that usually you're not going to be a 5-star and you're not a 1-star. So it's like people are really glowing. Like, they're so happy with it that they're giving a glowing report, which probably isn't most people's experience of the product, be that product a book or a podcast or whatever. And then the people who give 1s are clearly not. And I always think that it's really funny with people who give 1-star reviews on stuff, though, because it's like the level of, like, let's say someone's had, and I'm not talking about my stuff now, because I like to sometimes, I'm just interested in human nature. So I'll just look at, like, say, a really successful book. So a book that's done really well in, like, let's say, the self kind of personal development field. And I'll look at it and there'll be, it's like, let's say 1,000 5-star reviews. And then there'll be 2 or 3 1-star reviews. And I'm thinking, like, the level of arrogance that person must have to think that they are right and all those 5-star reviews are wrong. And, like, the truth is that, like, it is what it is to everybody else. But when somebody comes out with that, and what I will say, what I've learned about reviews, a lot of my friends are involved in music and writing and, like creative arts. And I've learned this myself as well. Is like now I just really don't let it bother. It really genuinely doesn't bother me now. But when I first, my first books came out, I did get upset when I saw, like a 1-star review that kind of eviscerated something that I'd worked hard on. But it was, I remember something my friends in music said, which is if you ever look into these people, which is not hard to do because usually there's a username that they have across all platforms, and you look into them, and like, let's say for my friends that are DJs, the person trying to rip into them would be a bedroom DJ who's never made it big. So they're ripping somebody that's making a career out of it. And it's the same in writing. If anybody ever really rips into me, like on my early books, I'd look into them and I'd see that they were trying to be a writer and they couldn't. And so they're not actually having a go at you. They're having a go. So I'm sure it's probably the same with people with a podcast. The people that are really being critical of a podcast, they probably want to do a podcast, but they're coming up with a list of reasons why they can't do it instead of just facing the truth that they're fucking lazy, And
it makes them feel better.
Exactly. You're better off slagging somebody else. I've seen it in the military with people getting awards and other people slagging them off. People getting into the SAS and other people slagging them off because they've done something that the person hasn't had the guts to go and do, or it's something that everybody in a creative industry or probably any industry will have to go through at some point, is coming through the other side of negative reviews. Because the truth is, you're never as good as they say that you are, and you're never as bad as they say you are, right? I can't remember who said that, but it's a great fucking quote. And I heard recently on a podcast that someone was saying that Kevin Durant, who's a fantastic basketball player, has fake accounts which he uses to defend himself on Twitter. And that made me feel really, really sad for the guy, because I'm thinking, like, dude, your fucking work speaks for itself. And I felt really bad for this guy that he's like one of the best, maybe right now, arguably the best basketball player in the world. And he's having to and he's so insecure that he feels the need to have to defend himself against people who have done nothing. They've done nothing in their life.
I did see that, yeah. You have to wonder, it's like you have to kind of leave all that behind sometimes to hit that level, of max of amazing ability. But you think we never lose that worry of like, is that troll's comments, is that right?
I think you can lose that, dude. I think that's something that you will eventually lose on your path. I feel like I've kind of got out of that now, and I think talking to other friends, and I think it's something that you can get out of. I think that like anything, it's if you're having a really bad week, that might creep up, But I think in general, it's something like, I think it's a muscle like anything else. You can train it. You can train resilience in that area, because you have to just have that thought process of every time if you ever see something like that, you just have to ask yourself the question, who is it that's criticizing me right now? Like, what is their, what is their expertise in criticizing me? Like Joe Rogan said this great thing once, which has stuck with me, which is, Michael Jordan's not sitting there writing YouTube comments, right? And I thought that's a great fucking way of thinking about it. So if I come across a comment and I just think like, or someone if I get a message or something like that, I'm thinking, who's sending me this message right now? Who is this person? Is this somebody that I aspire to be like? And if I don't aspire to be like them, then why do I give a fuck? And the answer is usually you don't.
That's very true. And it's most of the time, it's people who, again, it's probably they don't know what to do with themselves. They have no kind of outlet for what's nagging at them. And that's why I think a lot of guys hit the drink and drugs, because they can feel that there is more to life, and they can feel that urge, something deep down. Like for me, I knew it was a podcast. Like I knew it was something I needed. There was more to life. So that's why I wanted to go away and I found it, and by chatting to people. But for some people, they become a painter. But for some people, they don't know. And they sit and do a boring job, and they sit and just hit the drink, because every weekend, because it's easier than having to really feel that pain and think, what is it I want from life? And it's really sad. It's, and this is why I think it's great that we do have like things like the military, like podcasts, that people can go and create their own stuff. But it's sad that some guys would rather knock people down, like the crab in the bucket mentality. Yeah. They'd rather pull each other back into the bucket rather than try to find a way getting out the bucket themselves. And that's why I really admire, that band of brothers you kind of get in the military. It's that kind of, you help each other, you pull together. I don't know, like the modern day military.
Yeah, but you like, what I will say is that is a bit of a Hollywood representation of it.
Definitely.
The fact is, in a company of, let's say in a company of 130 people, there'll be people in that company who are fucking losers who everyone else has to drag through, and you're doing that work for them. Like something like Band of Brothers, it feels like a parachute unit, so it's like a bit more elite. So you kind of get like a bit more of a chafe. You get rid of that. But like even then, dude, even in an infantry company, there's plenty of people who will bitch about the people who are trying to do more. Like it's just part of human nature. There's just most people are. There's not many people who are leaders, and there's a lot of people who are willing followers, and then there's other people who are what the kind of the toxic group is people who they don't want to be a follower, but they're either not good enough or not willing enough to be a leader, and they're the toxic group, and they're the people who will leave the fucking shitty comments, and they're the people who will slag off people in the workplace because they feel like they should be in charge. They feel like they should be calling the shots, but they'll do nothing about making that happen, but they feel entitled to it. And it's, again, I think we see more of that now because it's always been around. It's just, it would have been them and other people that felt like that would have been congregating together and talking with each other. Let's say my granddad worked in the fucking steelworks, right? There would have been people like that at the steelworks, but they would have been in their little sour-faced group talking with each other, and you wouldn't have really seen it unless you happened to overhear something, but now you see it because it's a comment. They have access to do it. And I think I've tried to like flip my way of thinking on this. Instead of to get angry at them, is I just feel fucking sorry for them. Because I'm thinking like, one day you're going to be like lying in your fucking bed in hospital with a bag full of shit attached to you. And you're going to look back on your life and you're going to think, what did I do with my life? I spent it slagging other people off in comment sections. I mean, what a fucking waste. So I feel fucking sorry for that person. I also think that they have a responsibility for getting their own shit together. And I'm definitely I'll give people a hand up, but I'm not giving them a hand out kind of person,
I definitely
believe in that.
So
but so I was just going to say, like I think that anyone who's listening that feels that, just fucking feel sorry for these people because they're fucking losers, and it's definitely not worth taking what they feel to heart because, they're literally they're the definition of being a fucking loser.
So how would you create, the guys that you do, like you mentioned, I can't remember, was it before we started or just after, but, the ones that you go and you sit and, like, you can go for a drink with and they're, like, brothers from another mother kind of thing, you can sit and give each other hugs, but each one of them is killed, each one of them has fought together and bled for each other and all that, but how do you build that camaraderie if you're not got the military option? Like, how can we create that in civilian world? Is it?
I'd say probably go out and kill some hookers together.
GTA style.
Right. So I think a clear answer is sports teams, and not everyone wants contact sport. For me, contact sports is just, it's just the fucking shit. Like, I like sports where people get hit. But I just think some kind of sport, some kind of discomfort that you share with each other. That could be walking up Ben Nevis in the fucking rain and the sleet. It doesn't need to be a ball game or anything like that, but something where you are going through a shared experience with some hardship. And there's so many ways of doing that. and doing it on a regular basis, basically. And I think that's pretty simple. And then the other thing as well is get what you have to remember. I love thinking the best of people, but the truth is that not everyone is out to make the most out of life. They're really not, and you need to understand that and shed the people who aren't. And like, if you can't shed them, then you just need to put them on a side where you can still be friends or whatever like that, but they are not the people that you aim to spend time with. So if you end up spending time with them, then, because they're family or whatever like that, then that's fine. But you don't aim to spend your time with them. You should aim to spend your time with people who are in whatever field that they're in, that they want to be, great at what they're doing, or they want to get the most out of it. Like, so some people, for instance, I know people who are really into running. Now, because of their physical attributes and stuff, they're never going to win the fucking London Marathon. But they're going to go and run the motherfucker every year, and they're going to give it their best. Those are the people that you want in your life, in your circle. And if you have a group of people like that, and if you go through some shared experiences together, and if you motivate each other and push each other to be successful, that is what I think. That's taking like some of the best things that you get from in the military. Like in the military, I sought out the people who were the best. I wanted to be friends with the best soldiers in the company. I wanted to be friends with those. Like when I left the army, when I left the army, I joined the gym, and the people that I started hanging out with there were a professional rugby team. I put myself in positions to be around people who are elite at what they do. And it doesn't need to be the same field. In fact, I think it's beneficial that you're not always in the same field, because you can learn a lot from people who are doing different skills than you. But yeah, you just got to fucking find things that are hard, and that can be like I do think that you need a combination of things in your life that are physically hard and mentally hard.
So how does your, because when you first start in the army and you're getting trained to kill and, take lives and things like that, but does your opinion of like the enemy, like the guys that you're fighting against, did that change with your sort of service away? Did the bond between you guys become stronger and it create against the guys you were fighting against, or did you start to understand it as you learned more about the culture and their traditions and their view?
Yeah, so for my group, we were just professional soldiers. So we were professional soldiers, and whichever enemy you put in front of us, it could have been whoever, we would have fought them because we were professional soldiers. None of us, I don't think, in particular, really had much against the enemy that we were fighting. Doesn't mean we liked them, but we didn't really hate them. You would find a lot more hatred towards our superiors in the upper echelons of the army and in politics than you would ever. You would hear us the hatred that we have towards politicians and the upper echelons of the army, kind of like brigadier level and above, is a lot like, so basically your generals and the ones that plan strategy. Our hatred of them is a lot stronger than that of what we had towards the enemy. And in that, yes, that probably is something that is a unifying and bonding, force, because it's like, we had a common enemy, but we had the common enemy in two places. There was the enemy that was trying to kill us, and then there's what we felt the enemy was trying to get us killed, if that makes sense.
Because I went to see Ant Middleton's stage show recently, Mind Over Muscle, and he was talking about how, I think they were called Ruperts, because nearly all the officers were called Rupert, but it kind of just like a nickname for them, and they kind of used that as a bonding, like the soldiers kind of used them as a point of ridicule, a point of hatred, as a kind of focal point. And it kind of hit home. It's like, we do that in all sorts of work. We do that with like our bosses. We do that with the PTs in the gym. Like if you're in a group class, and maybe in jiu-jitsu, you do it with the upper belts where you're trying to become, go up the ranks and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting to see how it still happens all through life and that.
It is, but what I would say on the flip side of that is you have to remember that there are those officers who might be a unifying point of hatred, but there's also the ones who are a unifying point of love and respect and admiration.
Mm.
You mentioned earlier Band of Brothers, right? Is there a more perfect example of a fantastic leader than Major Dick Winters?
Well, that's the guy.
His men. Yeah, exactly. So that is a unifying factor. Before him, there's I forget his name now. There was the guy played by Ross from Friends. He was the total opposite.
Yeah.
So they're going to unify. They're going to unify in one way or the other. It's either going to unify in hatred or it's going to unify in respect and determination. And when you've got an officer, when you've got a leader who you do want to, like, who you do respect and who you do think is a fucking professional and a great fucking soldier, there's no better feeling than knowing that you're like lined up behind that person and you want to go out and work for that person. On the opposite hand, on the other hand, when you've got someone that you feel is incompetent and bumbling, you want to do everything you can to kind of fuck them up.
Now let's take a break here, and I just want to give you a quick shout out about my affiliates I've got set up. I've set up some awesome deals with some amazing companies. If you go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, that's www.nextlevelguy.com/AFFILIATES. Or if you click on affiliate deals in the blue ribbon at the top of the website homepage, you can go straight there and enjoy my affiliate wonderland. There's so many special offers here. There's listener exclusive deals, discount codes, and so much more. There really is something here for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're buying for yourself, a special occasion, or for somebody like a birthday, Christmas, or if you want to get jiggy with your special partner. You can find out whatever you need here. There's a lot of inspiring companies, some interesting products, and some stuff that will blow you away. There's companies for like Onnit, Amazon, MeUndies, Barbell Apparel, Dollar Shave Club. There's companies that help you with dating, with sporting equipment, with tactical gear, outdoor equipment, gadgets, and so much more. I particularly love from Onnit. They do a cognitive enhancer, which is known as Alpha Brain. I use Amazon to buy like my jiu-jitsu tape. I get all my t-shirts from Under Armour. They do an amazing special t-shirt that keeps you hot when you need to be hot, and it keeps you cold when you need to be cold. It's like a thermal in a t-shirt. Dollar Shave Club have some amazing deals just now on subscription packs for new beginners. There's sporting equipment there for mouth guards. There's tactical gear there for going camping. There's outdoor equipment. There's gadgets. If you need it, it's there. And stuff that you didn't even know you need is there. There's some X-rated stuff there. And there's also some companies that you can work with to improve pickup. There's companies there that you can work with to get better as a musician. There's companies there that can help you to read more books. There's so much more there. There's something there for everybody. Please note, I do not receive any information on you or your purchases. All I receive is a small commission from the business as a thank you for sending you to shop with them. They monitor this through the links. They don't monitor anything else about what you purchase. This doesn't affect the price you pay, but it helps me to develop and expand the podcast. I'm extremely thankful for you to take the time to spend your money via my links and for listening to this show. You're helping me to make this podcast better by allowing me to use the monies I get in commissions to make the site bigger and better, to evolve it, and to keep going and getting better and better guests and producing better quality, such as the mics and that I use. If you're on the site, you can go into the show notes and click on the graphic and it'll take you straight there. Click on the affiliates deal in the blue ribbon at the top of the page, or if you're listening to this and want to check out the deals, go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. I really appreciate you listening to this waffle each episode, and now let's get back to the interview. Cheers. Because I still love that line in there when he says to David Swimmer's character, or the guy from whoever his name is from Ross, when he says, "You salute the rank, not the person." And I just thought that was great. It was like a portrayal of like how, you had that guy who was taking his own personal hatred about the guy getting higher up than him out on him rather than following in rugs. It kind of showed how petty he was rather than be professional, and it really kind of stuck home and it helped me see.
And there's a lot of people like that, but then there is people like Dick Winters out there too. There's great
And
officers.
that's the great thing about it but it's good to see, not good, but it's helpful to see that it's not just your work, it's not just your friends, these kind of things. There's always going to be dickheads and there's always going to be great people. You just don't need to put up with them in the environment. You can gravitate towards the better people that push you and things like that. But how did you find leaving the army? I mean, did you struggle with like coming back into civilian life and find it boring? Did you find it difficult to kind of appease yourself?
Yeah, so you got to remember when I came back from Afghanistan, there was a period in time where I was still in the army but not on operations. So that was quite boring, But so I you can still be in the army and have a boring time if you're not on operations. I found it quite boring, because most of the time you're not on operations. When I first left the army, I mentioned, I was very lucky that the gym I started working at as a personal trainer, there was a professional rugby team using that place. So I instantly had a new brotherhood and a new group of lads. Like I said, rugby team is very similar to like squaddies, and we'd go out a lot, we'd work out a lot. It was so I had a very successful transition at first because I went into, and it's only like with hindsight I can see this, but that period was really good because it was, I basically I was like a civilian, but I was a civilian, but I still had like a lot of the best things about the army going with this rugby team. But then the gym shut down. The rugby team was kind of disbanded, both like separate, both in separate incidents. And all of a sudden, then I was on my own, and I didn't have that group around me anymore. And I started to drift, and I started to kind of like struggle with those questions of, I felt like all my life that I was supposed to be a soldier. I'm now 20, what was I, like 28 years old. I'm like, well, hang on, what do I do for the rest of my life now? Like, I definitely felt like I'd been put on earth to be a soldier. And I thought, that's it. I'm never going to be going back to combat again. I'm never going to be back in those adrenaline high situations. I'm never going to be riding into Basra in Iraq at the head of, dozens of armored vehicles with Apaches flying overhead and all that stuff's never going to happen again. And I started thinking, like, what the fuck is the point? Like, if I've hit the high points of my life, and this is something that like a lot of athletes talk about as well, is this. It's you're very young in your most people they come out of education, they go into a job, and they just kind of go through the motions of that through the rest of their life. And some people never feel like they found purpose, which has got to be horrible. But I knew what my purpose was without a doubt. I was supposed to be a soldier. I was supposed to be a soldier in combat. And then I came out of that knowing that I'm never going to get to do that again. And knowing at 28 years old to know that you don't get to go to do your purpose again, that was like kind of like a shattering moment for me. So I'm like, fuck me, I might have 50 years left of my life, and what's the point of it?
So how did you cope with
that? Drugs and drinking. So yeah, I was just I did like I did what a lot of people do when they're lost, and just to, I didn't realize at the time just how depressed I was, and there's like some of that was mental, some of it was like physical, and I think looking back on it now, just being torn away from my kind of voluntarily torn away. But I'd gone from being in this kind of group, this like if you again like to use the ape analogy, like I've been in this like troop of monkeys or whatever, and now all of a sudden I'm on my own. And everything it was like my whole world just did a 180, and I didn't like it. And I think the thing with me with drinking and drugs is I always knew it was a bad decision, but I just didn't care, because I literally got to the point of I didn't care if I died. I just didn't care. And like sometimes I'd kind of go through like a binge, and I'd come out the other side of it, and I'd be really disappointed that I was still alive, because I just had enough. I was like, I'm done with this. Life is over now. What is the fucking point? Just get me out of it. And I had that for like a couple of years.
And I mean, are you able to move past that at all, or is it always there? Is it always kind of at the back of your mind? And because like I suffered with depression when I was younger, and it's that moment of always keeping busy. Just you're never quite sure if it's there. But I mean, do you find you've kind of accepted that part of your life is finished and now you're moving on to something else, or do you still struggle with it?
No, I've accepted that I'll never accept it, if that makes sense. And that has given me some peace. I've accepted that I will never, I don't think I ever will hit highs like I had then. I just don't. I mean, I've had best-selling books. I've done a lot of traveling in the world. Nothing has come close to being in combat. Nothing. And I've kind of accepted that that's just going to be how it is. So it doesn't mean that I can't still have a great life.
That was going to be my next question.
Those moments. Yeah, so I can still have great friends. Like, I'm very lucky, like I said, about that reunion last weekend. I've got this group of guys there who, like a lot of people in life, maybe don't even know if they can call on somebody on an emergency. I've got a group of friends who I know literally would have died for me. And I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't do now. But they've actually proven that they would die for me. I also have a good family, a great family. I've got good civilian friends too. Don't get me wrong, and I think one of the things about, I don't want people to think that I just have military friends, because the thing about my civilian friends is I judge them by the standards I judge my military friends. But if they meet those standards, and a lot of civilians do, then they're in too. So I have a great group of friends. But yeah, I've just accepted the fact of like those days are behind me. They're not coming back, and I think that's something that's helping with age. Is like now I'm like, say, past the army age. It's not even an option that if there was an Afghanistan going on now, I couldn't go back to it anyway. But that option's out of my hands. And I think that's helped me kind of, like I said, I'm not this might fucking sound crazy to people, but I have dreams about, I don't have nightmares about Iraq and Afghanistan. I have dreams about them. And when I wake up and I realize that it's not real, sometimes I'll actually wake up in tears because I thought I was back there and I wake up and I'm not. And that can be so upsetting to me that it actually, and it's not that I wake up and then I start crying. I actually wake up in tears. I think I must realize as I'm waking up that it's not real. And put it this way, like it upsets me more than any breakup or anything like that. Like my breakup from combat in the army is more upsetting than any breakup with a woman.
No, that makes perfect sense.
It's yeah, and it's because thing is, if you break up with a woman, no matter how much you loved her, there's always that possibility that you're going to meet another person. Well, that's not happening now with the military. It's more like getting over the death of someone. It's which is unfortunately something that if you've been in the army and infantry in the last 20 years, that you've had something that you've had to have done, and it's almost like that, going through grief and knowing that you're never going to get to see that person again. So you try and just think like, Joe, I'll just try and be happy for the good times that we had. And sometimes you can do that, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have bad days.
Because I mean, from a personal point of view, like I've only had one probably relationship who I could have seen myself getting married and all that kind of stuff, and it still has probably fucked me up now, thinking years ago, and like every time I'm always using her as the benchmark for other people, probably still in love with her, all this kind of stuff. And now when I can completely get where you're coming from. Obviously, it's nothing on the scale of it, but I mean, it's. I think we've all got that one person or that one event or one life that we would all jump back to, and is it the way that the army is there a kind of assistance when you leave the army, or are you just kind of left on your own devices once you leave? Is there a kind of withdrawal sort of services that they provide, or is it just here's?
Yeah, overall, it's a very. I think it's a very bad transition package that you get. I mean, they spend years turning you into a soldier. They spend fucking days turning you into a civilian. But the thing is, no matter how much work they could do on you, they're not going to replace. Again, it's not something that's replaceable. So I do think the British Army has a lot of work to do on preparing people to be civilians. But that's more teaching people how to do their council tax and taxes and stuff like that. That's the stuff that I think the army can really help with. I just don't think there's that much that they can do to help you with. The other stuff is finding some kind of replacement to what you've been doing. I think a lot of it, and I am a critic of the armies. I do think they need to do more, but I am the first person to say that you have a responsibility yourself to kind of make that transition to civilian life, But it's awesome at the moment. Like I just saw a tweet yesterday from like this. He's basically the highest enlisted person. So like, he's your typical tough sergeant major, but he's responsible for the entire army, not just one kind of unit. And he's advocating meditation, and to serving soldiers. And I think that's fucking brilliant. And there's guys like him who are out there trying to kind of like get people more mentally resilient and trying to open them up to new ways of thinking. And I think that's really cool. But yeah, it's just like I said, you just got to accept the fact that, like, don't get me wrong, there are some people who will go on and do things like, there's a Gurkha SBS guy out there now who's doing something like, I think he's climbing 8,000 meter peaks in 3 months or something like that. There's guys out like him. Nim's there, I think his name.
I'm trying to get him on the podcast too.
Project Possible is this thing. There's guys out there. Like I'm working with a guy, Dean Stott. Dean is an ex-SBS guy too, who he got out. He did private work for a while. You should definitely have him on a guest. He's fucking amazing bloke. And he just casually just went, oh, you know what? I'm going to beat the record for cycling the Pan American Highway. So, he did like knock 20 days off the time. He'd never cycled 6 months before. So there are these guys out there who do go on and do it. So I can only speak for myself. I just know that there's not going to be anything for me that's going to replace that thrill of combat with a bunch of armored vehicles, Apaches, artillery, and all that. It's just, as much as I enjoy writing, it's not on that same fucking level.
Because we've got a guy, my normal job, if you want to call it that, is I work in a university and I look after PhD students. One of the guys I look after, and he's just started his own, he's changed his PhD project, and one of it is going to be looking at how the army, because he used to serve himself and he's got like army connections and things like that. He's going to be looking at like how the army change to civilian life mimics the, and we can use the university values that we have and like the ethics and stuff like that. And he's looking at how soldiers come in out and how we can help them and put a package in place that really does help that transition. And it was really scary that was really the first kind of proper, like somebody had done that before to kind of look at that.
Oh, dude, it's nuts. Like the lack of work. Like somebody should be leaving the army and not know what APR on a credit card is and stuff like that. Because the thing is, when you're in the army, a lot of stuff is taken care of you. You've got a roof over your head, you've got your food. Like all this stuff is like you get. It's deducted from your pay, but you don't have to worry about it. Your pay's taken care of for you. Your taxes taken care of for you. You're told where to be, what time, where, in what things. And like that is like people see veterans living on the streets and they think it's because they've seen terrible things. But I think most of the time it's because they never got taught how to manage money. They never got taught how to manage themselves because they just had to follow orders basically. And when you come out and you have a couple of bad months and you might make some bad financial decisions, maybe have a messy breakup, and before you know it, as a man, especially. As a man, you're the lowest of the fucking low when it comes to getting any kind of assistance. And you're out on the street. And once you're out on the street, getting off the street is so fucking hard for people.
Oh, definitely.
And that's why there's so many veterans on the streets, is because, like, dude, I struggle now. Like, I'm a fucking university graduate, so in theory, I should be good with things like paperwork. I'm still, years after being out of the military, I'm still struggling to get my head around things like taxes and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to, if you want to fucking section attack doing on enemy position, I'm your fucking man. I can remember that. I haven't touched an SA-80, which is like the British Army's rifle. I haven't touched one in over 10 years. You pass me one now, I will do all my drills on that seamlessly because it's ingrained on me. It's ingrained in me. But when I left, I didn't know what APR on a credit card was. And like part of that is personal responsibility. But at the same time, you don't know to look for things until you know. So when I was like, oh shit, why am I in debt? Right, now I'll look into it. It's too late by that point. You know, there should be things in the army where they're like, you know, there's no reason when you've got everybody in there, you're living in camp together, to not sit everyone down and be like, right, we're going to fucking do we're going to teach you some basic finances, or at least they'll let you know about these things. If you want to follow it, that's up to you. But we're going to give you the knowledge that if you do want to learn more and be more financially responsible, then you can. And I think that and I would take that further as well. As I think that it's almost criminal that in our school system, we don't have people getting taught these basics about your council taxes, water bills, all this stuff. Like it's mental to me that we don't have that. First aid is another one. Like I can't understand why we don't have first aid taught to people at teen age at the very least. I just can't get my head around that.
I mean, if you come out like at school and you can talk about depreciation of like a company asset, but you can't even like write a letter to somebody, or you don't know how to phone somebody and you know how to ask them for a set advice, or how to fill in a credit card form or something. You know, I completely agree with you. It is scandalous. And if you think like that would be the perfect opportunity, is when you've got all these young guys, is to kind of give them the skills, like the hard and the soft skills, in between the killing and the discipline and all that kind of stuff. There should be something in there. I mean, it's like, I think they've only recently started doing it at professional football clubs, because so many guys were getting put out after training for years and years, having no other kind of skills, leaving school, and, you know, 5, 8 years into it, suddenly realizing they weren't good enough to be superstars, but they had no skills in addition to that. I know it's not.
The football one is scandalous, really, because the percentage of people that get through from football academies into actual professional sports is tiny, but they put all their eggs in that basket. And here's the other thing as well on that, is that, because, you know, like, I don't think that that's a good idea, putting your eggs in all basket. But the chances are, if you don't put all your eggs in one basket, you probably won't make it. If you don't have that singular focus, you probably won't make it. So but you know, that's a very tough one. Is if you're asking a 16-year-old kid from a council estate, you know, right, hey, you know, I know you think you're going to play football one day professionally, but maybe you should pay attention to your school studies. They're going to be like, no, I'm going to be a professional footballer, and then they don't. And I can't remember what the stats is, but I know I think we're talking like 1% or less actually make you professional.
But then to think
don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was as low as that, and that's the same in the NFL. You know, with college football players and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
I know the NFL are starting apparently to bring something like that into it, because of the transition is just scary, you know, like the amount that actually do go off and become successful rather than just sort of college level, or like, you know, the ones who go to try to become and who actually become superstars. It's like 0.001% or something ridiculous. It's awful. But I mean, I just think it's scary that there's been more talk about the potential footballers and their skills than guys that we've taken around the world and taught to shoot people and hurt people, or, you know, like to go in these missions and like change other societies and all that. And then we're kind of like, we're caring more about a guy kicking a bit of leather around than somebody that we've turned into a killer and left.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to those clubs, though, it's probably the clubs doing it rather than it coming from the taxpayer. And this is the crunch of the matter, is that anything involved in the military comes from taxes. And people talk a good game about wanting to support the military more. But like, when it comes down to it, do they want to pay more taxes to do that? I would say most people are not willing to do that. And that's the bottom line about it. And that's why so much of the support has to come from other veterans, or, you know, just people who feel like that they have some kind of obligation or duty or want to do it. But it's not going to come from the country, because that means more taxes and people just aren't willing to pay that. Like, people will talk a good game, but when it comes to opening the wallet, it's just not going to happen.
Because they always say that, into it is don't look at what somebody's saying, look at their actions to really, what's important to them. And it's like you're saying, is people will say it, but when it comes to actually giving it or doing it, it's like you ask somebody to, well, could you volunteer and help somebody? Oh, no, couldn't do that, because it actually means saying it makes them feel better, like they're actually doing something. But when they actually get asked to do something, nah, most people don't want to.
I heard that the dopamine effect that you get from saying you're going to do something is as high, if not the same, as if you actually do it.
All right.
So, like, let's say somebody says, like, oh, I'm going to do a 10K run. That makes them feel so good about themselves saying it. That's why a lot of people don't always follow through, because they got such a rush from telling people about that is actually almost as satisfying as actually doing the thing itself.
Because a number of times I've heard mates talk about them, they're going to do this or going to do that, and you just know fine well they're not even going to bother. But
they're getting a dopamine hit every time they say that. They are getting like a hit that's making them feel good about that. That's why they're saying. They're not saying it to just be bullshit. They're saying it because they're getting this hit. It's like a hit every time.
So when you came out of the army, you've done some amazing books. You've got amazing feedback, and it was kind of amazing to me that you weren't getting that kind of the high that you had from the mill deal, but I can obviously understand from the experiences. But do you find like your writing, was it therapeutic? Did it allow you to kind of deal with that side of your life? Did it allow you to sort of put it into writing, the thoughts and the emotions, and kind of help you understand it and deal with it?
I mean, the Afghanistan book, Brothers in Arms, did. Like, the other books are more, they entertain me, they give me something to do, and I enjoy doing them. So they're, like, I think there's a lot to be said for just doing a day job that you enjoy. I mean, that is therapeutic in itself, right? Brothers in Arms, certainly, I put, that's the stuff where I've just kind of been brutally honest in there, and I've talked about the highs and the lows. Therapeutic, yes. It's also there's probably been some, definitely, like there's sometimes you bring things up and it kind of has a short-term negative effect. Reading the audiobook hit me a lot harder than I thought it would do. That kind of sent me like into about a week of depression, because like turns out that reading the words are different than just seeing them on a screen. So
how did you deal with that kind of thing? Do you?
Oh, I just went and got drunk for a week. I didn't deal with it very well. I dealt with it very badly. But on the plus side is like once I was kind of like a few days into it, like I kind of just realized that like I was like, you're just drinking, because it coincided with a visit. Some of my friends were visiting the UK, so there was like a legitimate reason to go out, and I had a very good time when I was with them. But then when everybody else went to go back to their hotel, I just kept drinking in the hotel on my own, like which nobody knew about until I told them. So I knew that, but it was just like, yeah, I was got a couple of days into it, and I was like, you know what you're doing, don't you? And I was like, yeah. I was like, you need to stop this, don't you? It's like, yeah. I was like, well, let's just stop now, okay. So it was, it was one of those. And there wasn't any point where I was like, oh, I want to kill myself or any of that stuff. It was just like, I was like, fuck me. It's just kind of one of those ones where I was like, look, at the end of the day, what I've always said is the fact is that like I lost comrades during my time in the army, and I'm never going to be okay with that. And I wouldn't want to ever be okay with that. There's going to be times in my life where it's going to fucking bum me out, and that's just how it is. And, you'd have to be some kind of fucking psychopath to not, so like when I was reading the audiobook and I'm talking about meeting their families at the, one of the boys' inquests, because there's an inquest into the deaths and that kind of thing. If your emotions don't get fucking beaten up from reading out loud about the time that you had to meet the family of one of your dead comrades and see how upset they are, if that doesn't fuck with your emotions, then
something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought, again, I don't beat myself up about that.
Like, I went through depression, and like I had to take tablets, and I can remember the days of like, it's better, you want to just stay sleeping than the wake up.
Oh yeah, those days, yeah, 100%. I have those. I've had that sleeping one is so like what I would say about that sleeping one. So I totally understand what you're having there. On top of that, what I'd be dreaming about while I was sleeping would be being back in Afghanistan and stuff. So it was like I just wanted to stay sleeping. And if someone had given me a pill and said you can just keep sleeping for the rest of your life and you'll be in these dreams where you're back in Afghanistan, I would have taken it. Now I wouldn't, but there was a time in my life I would have fucking 100%. If I knew that death was dreaming, I would have taken that option. I'm glad I didn't, but I would have done at the time. But it's hard for people to understand that thing of just wanting to sleep, isn't it? Because they just think you're being lazy, but it's not being lazy. It's just like, I don't know. It's just weird.
It's strange for somebody to, like, if you're sort of saying, and it's in your memories, it's in your mind, that you play like an online cinema, and somebody says to you, "Oh, it's just in your head. You just need to get out and exercise. You just need to get out and get some fresh air, change your habits." And you're thinking, I'm carrying around an internal prison. I need to learn how to deal with what's there. And I can still remember kind of, was it a few months back, I had a dream about one of my exes that felt so real that it was probably a very watered down version of your kind of dreams. But when I remember waking up thinking, I was deeply disappointed, really hurt that it wasn't real, that I hadn't seen her, I hadn't been with her. And I was like, oh, it kind of just really knocked me for six. And it came out of nowhere, and I think that was my brain dealing with it, and those were the kind of projections that my subconscious was working on or kind of trying to understand. And it's a really difficult one, and I think this is the problem, is like, I've tried antidepressants and I think they numb you. They don't deal with the problem as such. They numb they numb the part of it that comes from it, like the symptoms, but they don't allow you to deal. Like, in fact, I actually had better luck with cognitive behavior therapy. Like when you go and speak to somebody and learn how to deal with, like I had to.
Yeah, I think that's that stuff is, I think, something that I would strongly recommend people doing, the cognitive behavior thing. But I think personally, I never took antidepressants. I was offered them when I got diagnosed with PTSD. But I thought, I don't want something to numb me. Like I was saying, I want to feel these emotions. What I want to do is find a way of fucking channel them into a positive way.
See, that to me is amazing, because at the time it shows you, like, when I was there, I was so wrapped up in my own story and my own bullshit, like a lot of like young guys are today. And I was like, oh, I'm hurt by this, my ex, and whereas I was like, I can't feel this anymore, and this kind of, and there's you who actually have seen some horrific things, and you're thinking, do you know what? I want to feel this. I don't want to deal. I want to learn how to use this positively, and that's an amazing thing to be able to do. And you should be really proud of yourself for that. It's because when I think back to my worst, I could never have done that. I was so wrapped up in my own BS that it was amazing when I think back now that it feels like somebody else. But I had to deal with it rather than numb it. And I think this is the problem: is we put people on medication rather than helping them. It's easier just to kind of, we've done something for them. And
yeah, I mean, it speaks volumes to me that when I went to see the shrink to get I got my PTSD diagnosis, it was the first thing I got offered was antidepressants. I didn't get offered exercise. I didn't get offered, some kind of team event. I didn't get offered, like the chance to learn and gain perspective. Or I didn't get this, the idea of I should be in the outdoors. What I got given was, here's something to numb how you're feeling. And I'm so fucking happy that I said no. Because my thing is, like, if I look about all the drugs that I took and everything like that, it was never about numbing my feelings, really. It was about, I was trying to find something to replace highs. I wasn't trying to fucking numb myself. I was trying to find ways of replicating the adrenaline and the highs that I used to feel. I felt numb as it was. I wanted to feel alive. And that's what I was looking for. And I tried it through drugs, and it didn't exist there. And that's why I find it now. Like I said, I don't hit. I used to hit 11s out of 10s on a daily basis. Ha, that's really funny. My Amazon Prime guy just turned up, and he's literally got boxes past the top of his head. I may have a problem. I may have a new coping mechanism. It was just one of these things of like, I knew that that didn't work for me, and now I don't get my 11 out of 10 days. But I have a constant kind of 7, 8, 10s, 7, 8, and the occasional ones where if I go and see a friend at a music festival or something like that, that will kind of elevate it. But I just thought like what they wanted to do was give me a fucking pill that took me down to a 5 out of 10 for the rest of my life. And I don't fucking want that.
I think I remember when my mum said that to me, because when I was on them last, and I said to her, like, I want to come off them, but I think I hadn't replaced whatever it was. Yeah, I wanted to come off antidepressants, but I hadn't put anything else in place. And she said, I was like complaining about how I didn't like being controlled by anything. Mm. And she was like, but we all are. There's either online gambling, online shopping, it's people drinking, it's people this, people, everybody's got something that kind of controls them, or it's like and maybe a bit of a bad habit. But I think that's the thing is, we all assume that our ones are the worst and we have to stop now and do it, where sometimes it's just a way of getting through the day.
I don't think there's anyone that's not addicted to something. It's just a case of finding stuff that's like, look, I'm sure you're the same way with the jiu-jitsu stuff. If I don't get to go to the gym, I get fucking pissed off. And that's not a healthy thing. Like, it's a healthy thing to want to go to the gym, but it's not a healthy thing to be sitting with, say, my family at a party for a niece and be like, fuck me. I can't believe I didn't get to go to the fucking gym. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
But that addiction to the gym is a lot healthier than other things. Same with work. I set myself a bar if I want to write 3 books a year. If I don't write 3 books a year, I'm fucking pissed off. I should probably just be happy that I've written 2, but I'm not. Like, so I have an addiction to that kind of a thing. Like, if this book right now, if this book doesn't make bestseller list, as much as I've told myself that doesn't matter, it's still probably it's going to get to me a bit, even as much as I will try and not let it. So we all have addictions. It's a case of trying to channel it into more to healthier addictions.
No, I mean, I love the way like that you put that, because it's fine to be annoyed that you didn't get to the gym, but I mean, it's like you're saying, when it takes over your life like that, that's when you worry. And I've got friends who talk about jiu-jitsu, live jiu-jitsu, train at the jiu-jitsu gym. Then they'll be going home and they'll be YouTubing jiu-jitsu videos, and they'll be posting about it on the WhatsApp group and all that. And I'm like, yeah, like, to me it's a hobby. I might compete later on, might not. At the end of the day, I started when I was 36, and I'm still beating guys that are 16, 18, 23, 25, all these kind of things. Guys coming in with 6 packs. I lost a heap of weight. I made a heap of good friends from it, but it's the mental side of it for me. It's a hobby that I want. I get a lot from it. I lose the bullshit 9,000 obsessive thoughts in my head. It keeps me calm. It keeps me kind of controlled, and maybe that it would work perfect for you. Maybe it's something that you should look into, because
it's definitely something I want to pick up, just for that kind of like that clarity of.
I sometimes think maybe that's something that all kind of guys like vets should get free entry into. Is it something like that where it's the closest thing they can get, like that physicality, the bond of brothers. I actually sound like an advert for jiu-jitsu schools just now, like. But I mean, it's like that was the thing that helped me, but I had to find that on my own, and that's kind of the reason I started the podcast. Was I knew that there was more to just sitting in a pub. I felt so bad. I felt like a fake sitting in the bar pretending I liked being out in the bar chatting to guys and all that, when all I wanted to do was go home and be on the internet and creating a website and playing with this, working with animals, and then chatting to guys. And I was never into things enough to take over my life, but I liked enough to kind of go, do you know what? I'm going to go away and find out more about that, and then I find out a bit about that, and then I realised a lot of other guys were like that, and that's where the podcast came from.
Yeah. Well,
and I think that's great.
Sorry.
And I was just going to say, I think that's great that you're doing your own podcast, because it gives you a chance to let that creative side of you out, and kind of like the books and talk about these things. Do you feel like you've like kind of evolved and kind of, has it eased since you've started that kind of side of things?
Yeah, well, just one thing I'll say about the sitting in the bar and stuff is I love sitting in the fucking bar with the boys. But I think it's like you've got to have something to talk about when you're there. You're like, if all your life is in the bar is talking about the last time you sat in the bar, then what I love about it is finding out what everybody's been up to, sharing some stories. Yes, reminiscing on past times, but what's everybody been up to? Well, I'm going to go out to the States in a few weeks and see some of my friends there that I haven't seen for 6 months. And, some of them have just passed special operations command selection in the forces. Some of them are about to go to Iraq. Some of them are, doing MBAs, really good schools. And it's looking forward to hearing what everybody's up to and what their plans are. And that's that's the great part of it. So I'm all for. I love my bro time in the bars, but with it, for that kind of that catch up in the group. The creative side of things, as far as podcasting goes, is I feel like I'm really lucky that I write full time. And I write for myself. I do ghostwrite projects for people, but even then, it's very flexible. It's on my own time. So if I have an idea, I can usually just schedule my time so that I can run with that idea. So that for me, podcasting was more about, I wanted an opportunity, because I work on my own all the time, really. I wanted an opportunity, something that was set in stone, where I'm going to sit down and talk with somebody else about some issues that are important to kind of both of us. So, for me, I picked the military one because, that's something. It's being an author and being somebody with a bit of a social media presence. People turn to me about that kind of stuff. They ask me a lot of those questions, so it just seemed like the natural choice to put out a podcast where I could answer people's questions about the military, answer people's questions about writing, that kind of thing. And it's the great thing about the podcast is it's a brilliant excuse for reaching out and connecting with people that you might not have done otherwise.
Definitely.
It's really weird if you said to somebody like, "Oh, do you want to just meet for a coffee or whatever?" with somebody that you didn't know, that seems like quite aimless. So I mentioned that guy who's he's the head, he's the RSM of the army now, the head enlisted guy. And I saw his tweet about meditation, and I asked him if he'd like to come on the podcast. And he says that he's gonna, he's gonna keep it in mind, and hopefully we'll get something done on there soon. And if I just said to him all right, mate, do you want to can I just come in your office and say hello? It's probably not going to happen. But because of having the podcast, then hopefully him and I could have a conversation. I might have some interesting insights to him, but he's definitely going to have some interesting insights from me. And I think that's the coolest part about the podcast is having that, having that connection. And the other thing as well, I think, is when you're involved in something, it's very easy to just kind of be dismissive of it. But the fact is that, in 50 years' time, there's going to be people who don't know people that were involved in Iraq and Afghanistan and those wars, who want to know more about it. And I think it's really cool to have that there's going to basically be this library of, books and podcasts that I help put out there, because it's not just my stories, I'm getting other people in. I've had, American Rangers on, American Marines on, British military cross winners. It's I've got Aussies lined up for the show, more Americans, more Brits, and all different backgrounds, all different areas that they've served in, all different roles. And I think it's really cool to be a part of something where you kind of catalog in people's experiences, so that later generations as well as this one can kind of benefit from learning from it.
Because that's something. Going back to my point about going out with the boys and all that kind of stuff, was I realise now that they probably weren't the type of friends that I needed, because now when I go out, I have guys in jiu-jitsu who'll sit there and say, "Oh, I was listening to your podcast with so-and-so," and I'm like, what? Because I had never had that kind of strong friendships, probably like really deep down connections that I do now with some of the guys there. And, they're talking about stuff. And now that I realise that stuff that I'm interested in, they're interested in as well, that other people are as well. And I think that's what you're saying is like, it's the ability to share with people, to get, these are the kind of things that maybe people 10, 15 years won't know about. And it's good to get this stuff out. And, I remember speaking to, was it Mark Bell? Like a massive powerlifter guy, multi-millionaire. And he was saying about, he was really enjoying the interview I had with him because he didn't get a chance to speak about this usually because everybody just wanted to ask him about his slingshot, his gym, his X, Y, Z,
Oh, yeah. I heard of it. Yeah,
but that was the kind of thing that he found was like, a lot of times he didn't get to let that side of him out. And I think that's a problem a lot of guys have. The fact that we haven't really touched writing or books or anything yet, we've been on for almost 2 hours, I've not even kind of touched that. I think this was the beauty of where we said we do one on the military and the one on the books, because I knew this was going to go. I find you're just so easy to talk to, and it's like you come across as somebody that it's been like a friend for years, and I think we went straight into it and we're chatting away about like jiu-jitsu and all that kind of stuff, and you were like that kind of guy that you just met who you just know you like. You know what I mean? It's some people I meet on the podcast and think, oh no, you're not like the person that you portray. Like they have a kind of character that they put online, and I just knew you were like that kind of guy that I would just get on with, like because.
Well, I think something that is you can. I've met some friends in the last couple of years who've become really good friends who, have just been people who are really, because really it's like you think, fucking hell, I've known this person for 3 months. It's like we're texting every day. It's almost like getting in. It's almost like getting in a relationship with a chick. You go like head over heels with them. But think about it though. It actually makes so much sense because it's thanks to social media and stuff now. There's almost like this. You've almost kind of someone's gone through a lot of filters ahead of time. So it's like, right, is someone interested in personal development? Yes, check. That's a massive box. Is someone interested in physical training? Check. That's a massive box. Is somebody somebody interested in travel? Check. Massive box. You know what I mean? So there's like a lot of these things already that you've already kind of like a compatibility thing people have already gone through. I think as far as like online personalities and stuff go, I do think that there's a lot of people setting themselves up for a fall on social media because I look at it like this. How many people are having a fall from grace who like they were TV personalities in like say the 70s, 80s, 90s, who are now stuff is coming out about them and they're having a fall from grace. People are like, I can't believe that person was that way. Well, that is like now we've got social media and everybody's connected and everything's on people's phones. Like every night out, is on people's phones. So I just think like you should just be if you're in a creative industry or anything online, you should just be yourself, because if you try and put on a personality, it is not going to last. There's going to be something that's going to come out and out you as not being that person. Mm-hmm. So I think that like the other thing as well is it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about you're not going to please everyone. So if you're a bit rough around the edges with your language, some people won't like that. Well, that's fine. There's other people who will like that. If you want to make sometimes jokes that are a bit like, a bit maybe not for some people's tastes, then it will be for other people's tastes. If you want to say that you haven't got time for people who are too lazy to get off their ass and do exercise, that's going to offend some people. Some people are going to love it. And you just have to be true to who you are. The other thing as well is I think it's, I think something that I don't think people utilize on social media is the ability to say, oh, you know what, I was actually wrong about something and I've learned my lesson on it, or I've changed my opinion on this thing. People I don't think people ever want to kind of admit that they're wrong. And I think something that I found on social media has been really useful to me is saying like, you know what, like I've changed my opinion on this, or I don't know. Yeah. I don't know the answer. People like Brexit. I get a lot of people messaging me about my opinions on Brexit and stuff, and I just tell them the truth. I don't know. I don't know the answer one way or another. Like, because
this will be the first time we've done it. So how can we know how things are going to happen?
Yeah, it's all right to say I don't know. You don't have, just because you've got a blue tick on social media doesn't mean you need to have a fucking answer to everything. You know, it's like, I think it's very arrogant to think that you can.
It's like that thing with Donald Trump. You know, everybody was kind of going on about it as like, you go into every comment of his on Facebook, and there's like people calling each other libtards and this, and they're calling them by dickheads and all this and that. Oh no, you're completely wrong and all this kind of stuff. And you're thinking, but you're just a lot of them just follow the media that kind of accentuates their biasm already. You know, they only look at things that support what they're saying, and it's fake news and all that bullshit. You know, when it's something they don't like, and it's really sad the way that it's like you're saying.
I mean, we've got these amazing tools, and most people, well, not most people, but a lot of people want to use it to just hurl abuse at people. And again, they're the people that you should feel sorry for because they're fucking losers like that, if that's all they've got going in their life. But I mean, I put a tweet out the other week that a lot of people say, because I'm not really active on Twitter because I feel like Instagram is a lot more positive. Twitter, I just felt was just too negative. But then I thought, you know what? There's people here who maybe could benefit from, you know, like the work I'm doing with the British Legion and stuff. Maybe like these people benefit from it, so I should start using it. And I put a tweet out, and some people, because I was being critical of some veterans, not all veterans, but some veterans, because I was being critical of the ones who felt like they're owed everything because they're veterans, which I disagree with. I think that you're owed a fair deal as a veteran, but you're not owed the world. And some people, because they didn't even really read what the tweet was. They just saw veteran and criticism and assumed that I was fucking slagging off all veterans and saying veterans didn't deserve everything. Do you know what I mean? They went into a total knee-jerk reaction. And my instant reaction as a young man, a bit of an angry man, was to tweet back at them, read the fucking message properly, you stupid twat, or something like that. But instead I thought, hang on, just think about this for a moment. They're actually coming at you. They're coming at you not because they're trying to be a dickhead, but they're coming at you because they think like wrongly, but they think that you're attacking veterans, which is a group that you care about, and you're actually trying to help. So you're actually both coming at things from the same. You're coming at things. You want to get at the same destination. You're just coming at it from different points. So I started engaging with people who had that reaction and saying like, look, you know, this isn't what I'm saying. I'm sorry if you felt that way. What I'm saying is this. I should have done a better job at explaining it. And almost all of them came back with, oh yeah, I'm sorry, mate. I shouldn't have reacted that way. I overreacted. I thought you were, but no, actually you make a really good point. And yeah, I see what you mean. And almost every single one, we ended up where we were like, look, we both like, maybe we disagree and you don't think that that's the case, but we're both on the same team and we're looking for the same thing. But that could have gone totally the other way. That could have just gone to, you're a fucking prick. No, you're a fucking prick. No, you're a prick. And gone back and forth like that and ended up as just blocking each other. But I would say like there was only, I'm just trying to think now off the top of my head, there was one person that didn't come back to my mess because I said to him like, there's, everyone else kind of came back with like, oh yeah, I see your point, or I disagree with your point, but yeah, I see where you're coming from. You know what I mean? But there was only one bloke who didn't, and I think that was because I just guess he didn't have the ego to just say like that he'd actually misread it because it's one of those things on text messages, email, whatever. If you come in with if you have a preset of you're angry and you read a tweet, you will read it as an insult. Whereas if you were in a good mood and you read that, you would probably see it totally differently. That is the one problem about just using. That's why like people slag off emojis. Saying they're not professional, but emojis can be so useful because sometimes you need that little face just to get across that you're not being a dickhead or whatever, or you are making a joke or something. But like, I think there was only one person who didn't kind of like put the ego in check and be like, oh, you know what, I read it wrong. You're saying that you could have worded it better. I'm saying I could have read it better. Let's just agree that we're both looking for the same thing and like move on with our lives in a positive way. So that was kind of cool to actually have that experience rather than it just descend into a slagging match. But I will be the first to say that I am very cautious about putting stuff on Twitter because I know how easily it can just be misinterpreted, sometimes deliberately misinterpreted and just whipped into, because it's one of those ones where I'm like, I know if I have good intentions or not, right? So I know my conscience is clear, but do I really want to spend the next few hours then fucking extracting myself from that situation? Or is it easier to just not put it up in the first place? Which is sad, because it's like, usually if the message is trying to be a positive one, and, people hijack it for their kind of like, to fit their own negative worldview, it's sad that happens, but that's the reality. You've got to pick your battles.
It's really sad when you've got to actually dictate, should I post this? Is it going to be easier just to kind of step away from it? And you get these guys who kind of, they're so primed and ready for a fight because that's the way they feel manly and masculine, by attacking people that dare disagree with them, But when you do see that comment chain that it starts off maybe at each other, and then at the end they say, "Yeah, fair point. I never seen it like that," or like even like you said, I just don't know, and people kind of go, "Oh yeah, well, I do respect your opinion on this. Have a good one." And you see, and it's so rare, but it's amazing when you see it. Like, I don't agree with Trump supporters, but there's times I'll happily report somebody for insulting somebody, or like a really kind of personal attack about their daughter. Like, they've gone on to their Facebook account and found a picture of their daughter and really gone at them, or like something ridiculous from both sides. And I just think it's sad that we live in a society where there's people who spend all day just attacking others in their basement. Like, they don't want to bother doing something productive or build something or step into the light and kind of be the center of attention, but they're ready to rip anybody down that does. And
but like, I think of him like that. It's like, I just think of, well, great, because that's less competition. The more people that are fucking losers, the better. Like, that's less competition. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to listen to podcasts, or, well, they probably won't listen to podcasts because that's actual self-development. But like, I've had people before that have they've read my entire book and then have like messaged me to say that it's shit. And I just kind of want to say to them, then why did you keep reading? Like, if I start reading a book and I don't like it, I will just go, this book's not for me. I'm not going to then invest 40 hours of my life into that book and then more time into sending an angry message. I find that so fascinating. I really find it interesting, because I'm like, how much little stuff do you have going on in your life that you can afford to continue reading something or watching something that you don't enjoy? If it's not for you, mate, fine, just move on. It's really fucking fascinating. Like, it's like, imagine you just, I can't get my head around. Like, I can't get my head around to say, I put the TV on as a program I don't like, and I go, oh, this is terrible. I'm now going to sit here for the rest of the box set and watch this terrible program that I hate. I just can't get my head around that. And unfortunately, they're not the kind of people that you can have that conversation. Because I'd love to be able to get in their head and be like, well, why? Like, why is it? And I do think that it comes down to a lot of things in life. I do think it's jealousy. And it sounds a big, I think I have to be careful with ego on this one. That I'm not saying like, oh, they just want to be me. Do you know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying. But like, when I look at, I'll be the first to admit that there's been periods in my life where I've slagged other people off. And when I look back on those periods and kind of dissect them, it's been because I was unhappy with where I was in life. And I was kind of like, I've got friends of mine that are, some of my friends that are successful. I've definitely kind of I've been looking for a thing of, oh yeah, but did they get this easy? Or do you know what I mean? Instead of just saying to myself, they're just fucking working harder than you. There was periods in my life definitely where I would, I'd be the first to admit that my insecurities about my own kind of life led me to try and take a bite out of other people's successes. And that's why I think I can say with authority that when I get that or see that now, I think I recognize why it is. Because I'll be the first to admit that, especially I think in my early 20s, and then when I like a kind of early 20s period where I didn't really know what to do with my life, that I think that was something I definitely did then.
Are you seriously telling me that you grew and developed using social media? Do you not realize this is for cat videos only?
Yeah. Oh, mate, I fucking love cat videos. Look, it's the same as going to the bar. I told you before we got on air, I think, that, when I go to the States in July to visit my friends, I'm not expecting to get much, any work done in that month. That month is set aside for going to the bar and hanging out with my friends and doing a few road trips and stuff. That's not going to be when I'm doing my road trips, I'm probably going to have some podcasts going and maybe some audio books. But that month is going to be about the priority of that month is going to be seeing my mates and getting Larry. That's what that month is going to be about. And it's the same as social media. Someone wants to spend an hour on social media looking at cat videos. I am not going to begrudge them that hour. If you can say to yourself, what have you done with the rest of your, what have you done with the rest of your day? Because the thing is, mate, right? Let's say cat videos or anything else that's maybe just some silly videos. If that makes you laugh and it makes you happy, there's nothing wrong with having that in your life.
Oh no.
And
you've got,
and in fact, I would actually go as far as to say you should it's playful. We were talking about being playful and playing. Well, that goes for having a playful mind as well as a playful body. Dude, I have various outfits for my cats that I've bought off Amazon on a whim, where I thought I'm going to try and dress the cat up as a bumblebee or whatever. And it hasn't worked out, and it entertained me for 30 seconds, and it made me laugh. And that to me is worth it. That I got to annoy my cat for 30 seconds by trying to dress him up as a bumblebee. Now, did that contribute to me writing great books or anything like that? No, but it made me fucking smile. And sometimes you got to do stuff just for the fact that it's fucking fun.
Well, that's the thing. You have to have something. Yeah. You have to have 80-20, the diet thing. You have to eat clean for majority time, but still have the blowout. You need to have that laugh. You need to have that something. I was just thinking just now of we had a cat who died when she was 21, and it was she was wild kitting. Her mother had abandoned the whole set of them. So my mum got her as a kind of wedding gift. So she hated my sister because she was the baby of the group. But they came together, when she was making cheesy pasta, because they would split a can of tuna between them. And I was just thinking, if I tried to put an outfit on her, she would have ripped the shit out of you. She was a wild cat, but became a lap cat, but on her terms. She decided when the sort of clapping and the belly rub stopped, and then she quickly bit your hand and ran off. But I was just thinking, it's fine to do all that kind of stuff, but I'm trying to think who said it. It's that thing of, yeah, you're entitled to your opinion, but I'm entitled to tell you that your opinion's shit. You know what I mean? It's there's a whole thing about that. It's we're in a society now where it's almost like we want our own special space. We want to be able to say all the kind of stuff. It's like in America now they're saying, yeah, you have a First Amendment right to say stuff and be able to put it out there, but you're not protected from it if it's racist, if it's sexist, if it's I can't believe it.
Well, this is somewhere where I think the army has been very beneficial to me, and because I talk to my editors, I work with a few different publishers, and they've always said that they like the fact that I can take criticism on the work, and because I just want to make it better, and their notes make it better, right? Well, when you've had a sergeant major an inch from your face, screaming in your face, calling you things that I will not repeat on this podcast, and you can feel his spit hitting your face, and he's telling you that you're a worthless piece of shit, and then a lot more. It doesn't hurt when you get a note back saying, I think Act 2 is a bit long. But a lot of people, apparently, I've heard from my editors, I've been told that they literally, in these publishing houses, they have to have lessons on how to how to basically mollycoddle some of the authors, because they don't want to hurt they don't want to hurt their feelings and stuff, because when they're giving notes and things. Now, and that's just bonkers, because everyone's on the same team trying to make something better. You're not going to get notes back from an editor saying, this is shit and you're worthless, get out of my face. You're going to get that in the army, but it just toughens you up, and it makes you more, makes you, able to handle, criticism. And I think that thing you were saying about being able to have an opinion on social media and stuff like that, but someone else could say this rubbish is, I get a lot of people, especially younger people, predominantly ones that want to join the military, asking for my opinions on things, and I'm very like, there's some things that I will say that I do believe are set in stone. And so for instance, I will go and say, I think this is basically a law of nature. If you get outside, if you get outdoors, and if you exercise, you will feel better in body and mind. I think that is a law. I think that is something that I don't think you can argue with that.
Mm.
But if I say, I think the best way to start your day is by journaling, well, that isn't a law. That is something that will work for some people and work for other people. So I'll tell people, I'll say, like, look, this is what works for me, but it doesn't necessarily work for you. But there are a few things, like I said, like the exercise, like getting outdoors, which I'm quite happy to say, like, this fucking works. And if you're saying that it doesn't, it's probably just because you're fucking lazy and you don't want to do it. But if you actually do it, it fucking works. And but yeah, but other than that, like, it's like, look, opinions are fucking like assholes. We all have them. They fucking all stink, and just take them or leave them.
I think that should be the tagline for my podcast. Like, but that's the beauty of it. Is like, I mean, we've been talking for 2 hours and 20 minutes now, and it just feels like this is what I love when I find somebody that I can chat to, and it just feels like a mate. It doesn't feel like somebody that I have to kind of appease, or I have to go through the gatekeeper, like personal assistant, who's, oh no, you can't talk about this.
I kind of fall with it.
Yeah. Because sometimes you get that. It's like, I've had people saying to me, oh no, he won't talk about this, and it has to cover his book, and it has to do this, it has to do that, and I'm like, what? It's like,
oh, can we cover the book though?
it's just, it always puzzles me. It's like, what do you mean I can't ask that? That's just kind of, I'm interested in it, surely. It's like there's a wrestler who I was really keen to get on, some guy when I was younger, and he was just sitting there, and I was like, oh, I won't talk about when I was going through this bad, drug addiction stage. And I thought, well, surely that's the whole point, is how did he get into it? How did he come out of it? What could you benefit other people who are maybe going through that? And he's like, no, he bans people straight away if they even mention it. And I just thought, what's the point of that? It makes no sense to me. But
yeah, I mean, the drug stuff for me is like, I've always got really worried about admitting it, because it's like I say, I want to move to the States, and I don't want it to ever be held against me that I had a period in my life where I was making bad decisions. And it does worry me that's something that because look, some people like jumping on you for your mistakes. Like, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say that I fucked up in life and I've made mistakes. And the reason I make them public is not because I want a fucking hug. It's because I want to help other people avoid the pitfalls that I found myself, like falling in. And also, if they are already in them, how I got out of it and how I hope it can help other people get out. But the sad reality about things is there are some people that will then try and use that stuff against you. So I kind of see where that guy's coming from. But I think this all ties back into sometimes having to put yourself after other people. So like I was saying earlier about sometimes as a man, you might have to put yourself in physical harm so that other people are not in physical harm. And that goes with this. It's like me talking about the worst periods in my life, which I'm not proud of. It's not something I fucking enjoy doing, but I do it because I would be ashamed of myself if I didn't. If it helped one other person, then look at it like this. If I end up not getting my visa for America because of things I did in my past, one, I have to ask the question of, do I want to live in a country that's going to fucking punish me for past mistakes? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing. And two, can I live with myself if, because I wanted to live somewhere warmer and close to the beach, I held on to information that could potentially have helped somebody turn their life around? I mean, that's not who I want to be. So it's a pretty simple decision. Doesn't mean it's an easy decision, but it's simple.
I mean, that's the way I look at it, as if I think it was my mom that said to me that, anything that you struggle with, Google it, because there's about 10,000 other people who struggle with it too. Oh, yeah. But I like the idea of like, if one thing I can do, one episode of this, one question, one answer from somebody can change somebody's life and help them, it's amazing. I mean, I started this podcast for myself, but the fact that people are emailing me and saying, it really helped me. I really, that was a great answer, or like, could you speak to somebody about blah blah blah? Because I struggle, and I'm like, it blows me away that somebody from America, Africa, these kind of places are emailing me and telling me how helpful they found an episode. I'm like, what? Because I'm doing it to help myself in a way. And it's
but like you said, like none of us are unique. Like we all have the same questions. There'll be overlap in some people. Some people might want more of this, some people might want more of others. But there's going to be overlap, and people will find things useful. And I think that there's, I think that there's when it comes down to it, and you look back on your life, those are the things that you're going to feel. Those are the things that you're going to. There's nothing wrong with feeling pride if what you're proud of is something that's helped other people. There's nothing wrong with feeling pride. If your pride is how many young girls with daddy issues did you convince to bang you by offering them drugs? If that's what you take pride in, then yeah, you're probably a shitbag. Mm-hmm. But if you there's nothing wrong with taking pride in serving other people, and you can serve yourself. Like the best way to serve other people, I think, is like there's a difference between serving yourself, being a selfish bastard, and serving yourself, and like you're doing now with the podcast, like, yes, it serves you, but it serves a lot of other people. There's nothing wrong with that. And like, again, the only people that are kind of ever try and knock you down for that, people are too lazy to do anything themselves.
Well, I think there was, I'm trying to think who it was, somebody had tweeted recently that they're not interested in speaking or hearing a podcast from somebody who's never made a mistake. They want to hear from somebody who's fucked up royally but has come back from it.
Well, because that person's a liar. Because anyone that's saying they haven't made a mistake, straight off the bat, I can't trust that person because I'm like, you're fucking lying.
Oh,
like that person's lying. So it's like, why would I want to spend a couple of hours every week with somebody who I know is lying to me from the beginning? Why would I want to do that?
Because that's the way I look at it. Is like when I look at how much like I've screwed up, and then I meet guys at jiu-jitsu who are talking about like they've been kicked out of their family home, but they're now back on friendly terms with their parents, or they've maybe stopped seeing their kids because they split with their wife, or like all this kind of and I realize it's like, yeah, I don't have it bad at all, but
perspective is important.
Yeah, and just getting a chance to sit and speak to them, it might be the only person that they get to speak to who kind of gives them a bit of hope or clarity. The jiu-jitsu, some of them are saying like it's made them, it's helped their diabetes. Some are saying it's helped their ability to cope with their anger issues, and it's amazing from that point of view. And it's amazing being able to share that time with guys and be able to have that bond and see the change in them, and it's. I think this is a problem, is like we're giving them social media when they need jiu-jitsu. We're giving them like the drink and drags when they could join the military. They could, we're not giving them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, mate, I'll say this as well. The military, you're not going to find a bigger drinking club in the country than the military. Like drinking culture underpins like a lot of the military stuff. I think with this, it's all about just not having extremes of things. So it's, have your fucking social media, but get out to, it's don't have all your interactions be online. The same way of, I think if you especially if you're in business or you want to be an artist now, if all your interactions are face to face, you're missing out on influencing a huge group of people potentially online. It's about finding balance in these things. And it's if you do jiu-jitsu all the time and you never train weights, then you probably should go do a bit of weight training. If you're doing weight training all the time and not doing any cardio, then you need to get some cardio in. It's about getting balance in these things. And I feel like we're not living in we're not living in a time of extremes, but people are trying to make us live in a time of extremes, and it's our choice whether or not we buy into that. You don't have to buy into fringe politics. You don't have to buy into, extremes of, like whether you live on social media or whether you live face to face with people, or whether you do no exercise or you exercise all the time. It's your choice to buy into any of this stuff. It's obviously it's really important that people make the right decision, and it's things like this podcast are helpful to put people in the right direction. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the person themselves has to be in a position where they want to make that choice. And and we can't choose for people. We can put things in front of them, but it's down to the individuals to choose at the end of the day.
Well, I think when that's 2.5 hours, and I think you've probably helped thousands of people during that time, and this is before we even get onto the books. But I mean, I think that's what we sometimes need, is that short snap shock from some people, where we kind of get out our comfort zones, where we're kind of told, yeah, you have the right to say your opinion and all that, but you're a fucking dick for thinking that, or like kind of breaking them out of their soft space, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you have the right to be a fat, lazy piece of shit who never gets off the sofa. You have that right. But what you don't have is then the right to complain. If you are going to be the fat, lazy piece of shit on the sofa, fucking do you. But don't complain about it then. Don't complain to anyone else that you're not happy. Don't complain that you're fucking depressed. Don't complain that, you're not meeting the right girl. Don't complain that you're not fucking getting the right job. You have, you don't get to do both, is the thing. If you want to fucking do whatever the fuck you want to do if it doesn't hurt other people, but don't fucking complain about it then. If you want to do drugs, if you want to drink all the time, fucking do it, as far as I'm concerned. But don't fucking complain.
Yeah, they need a level of personal responsibility.
Exactly, man. That's what it comes down to. And I'm sure, anybody listening to this, is they're only, they're here because they believe that same thing. But yeah, that's gone fast, man. I gotta go because I'm gonna stick to my thing of I schedule time for my physical activity now. I schedule work stuff because I think that way, I'm hold myself accountable to it. So I'm gonna do my afternoon session of I'm gonna get outside and go get some go hit some hills and get some fresh air for my mental well-being.
I was just about to say that, actually, because it was I couldn't believe it. I looked at the time just now. It was 2.5 hours. What the fuck? So for anybody listening, just to wrap it up quickly, how can they keep in touch? Because I want to get you on again. We'll go through the books and the reading and the writing process, all that kind of stuff. But it's been I cannot thank you enough. It's like meeting a mate that you didn't even know you had, chatting. Yeah. But how can somebody listening, who's wanting to buy the books, who wants to find you on social media, get in touch? Even guys in the army who maybe want to chat to you about that, or social media, find your website, all that sort of stuff. How can they go about that?
Right. Okay. What am I selling at the moment? I'm selling my book, Brothers in Arms, which is about it's my memoir of the time in Afghanistan with my brothers. And then I think what most people find interesting and different to other books that have been written about Afghanistan is I go full honesty, brutal honesty about what happens when I came back, which is the kind of slide into PTSD, drugs, bit of all that stuff. But then positive message on the way out, how I came out of it through rediscovering purpose, exercise, meditation, all that kind of stuff. So I won't harp on too much about that. But yeah, it's Brothers in Arms. It's out. You find it in Asda, Sainsbury's, Tesco. It's on Amazon, Waterstones. The usual kind of bookstore places. I have a podcast called Veteran State of Mind, which is we talk about military stuff predominantly. But I think if you're interested in this podcast, then there'll be some crossover into it as well. It's Veteran State of Mind. The website is vsonpodcast.com. But if you look up social media, just put Veteran State of Mind and you'll find it. And my own personal social media is at GRJ Books. So one word, GRJ Books, Golf Romeo Juliet Books, or search for Geraint Jones. I use Instagram a lot. I use Facebook a little less, and I'm starting to get into Twitter. But it's the same handle for all of them. Yeah, dude, fucking thanks for having me on. That has gone fast.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it. Practice it. Use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.